I'd like to welcome everybody to our Tuesday, October 24th meeting of the Select Board. Our agenda is as follows. We'll have community input to start, appointments and resignations, financial forecast presentation, which will be jointly held with the FinCom, and we have met several members of the school committee, but I don't believe you posted your meeting. Did you?
No, so we will not discuss anything.
Okay. Have a report from the ARPA committee, town administrator, annual public evaluation, select board policies, town administrator report, liaison reports, the review of minutes and warrants, and another section of community input. So starting off with community input, is there anybody here in the audience? Debbie? Be sure to speak right into the microphone, please, and identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Debbie Bentley from Hildred, and I wanted to talk to you about my favorite subject, which is carbon emissions. I would like to, there's some good news. Carlisle's reduced its municipal carbon emissions by 27% since 2011. The bad news is we are running out of time, and if you do the math, we need to double our efforts because we need to reduce our carbon emissions by 4% to get to zero by 2050. This means that every decision regarding municipal buildings and vehicles must take the most sustainable route. For instance, the wastewater treatment plant emits more carbon than the fire station and almost as much as the town hall. So if we continue to replace like for like and continue to use propane, we will be continuing to add to the climate's problems. What I feel that has happened recently, and this is just my experience, is there seems to be the school is doing one thing and the select board has a commitment to being sustainable, but we need some joined up thinking here between towns, top departments and committees, so everybody's moving in the same direction. We also need to decide whether Carlisle will go for the next year in green communities, because obviously having adopted the specialized code, that's one of the prerequisites. We're missing 3 items from that list. I did email you last week about them. 2 are relatively small, but we probably, having looked at the requirements of the decarbonization roadmap, we have all the information. We just need to collate it and put it together so we create the report. Because we use Mass Energy Insight, almost all the information is already there. So I think, I know I've been in touch with the other towns that have adopted the specialized code, and they've all got their ducks in a row. They knew about this beforehand, so they've done this. I think that there's time if we act now to meet the June 30th deadline, but it does mean that the select board have to make a decision about, is this the route you want to go on? And the sooner better than later, because obviously we need that 8 months to put the report together. So I think, being a climate leader is a good thing. It will bring in more grant money. So I would urge you to consider this and hopefully take the step forward to becoming a climate leader.
Thank you. Anybody else? Excuse me. In the audience? Online? You want to raise your hand? I'm seeing none. I think we'll go to our appointments and resignations. David texted me that said he'll be here around 7:10, so another 5 minutes. Get this out of my. So I'm going to rely on you, Nathan.
I can help out if you want it.
Do you have it already?
I do.
Excellent. Go for it.
First, I just wanted to ask, is Heather in the audience or on the Zoom? Because I know she had emailed Aubrey that she was going to attend.
Yes, she is in the audience. She was raising her hand.
Great. Hi, Heather. All righty. So I move to appoint Heather Wright, 58 Rogers Road, to serve on the Youth Commission for a term ending June 30th, 2026.
Thank you. Any,
Second.
no, much better. Is there any discussion?
Heather, do you want to just say briefly what your interest is? You don't have to, but I figured since you were there. we should-
Thank you. We are a new family to the town. We moved here about a year and a half ago, and we are just so excited to be a part of the amazing community and just be a part of, especially because we have 5 children. Our oldest 2 are in middle school, so we'll be part of Friday Night Live for many years.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, this is going to be a roll call vote.
Arnold, I
Brown eye.
Reed, aye.
move to amend the terms of the members of the Youth Commission to Stephanie Keene, term expires June 30th, 2025. Chelsea Mascari, term and expires June 30th, 2025. Laurie Eckler, term expires June 30th, 2024. Amy Smack, term expires June 30th, 2024.
Okay, I'm going to just explain. This is sort of housekeeping.
Second.
Oh, sorry. This is just a housekeeping thing. We had made a mistake and everybody had been appointed to a 1-year term and they should have been 3-year staggered. So we're just kind of cleaning it up.
And are they all aware that we've just extended all of their terms?
I believe Gretchen has notified them.
Sorry, I'm Stephanie Keene, and yes, everyone is aware, and we appreciate the logistics of sort of cleaning up all that
Great.
information.
Okay, thank you. Okay. This too will be a roll call vote.
Arnold, I
Brown eye.
Reed, aye. Okay.
We now have more FinCom members than select board members.
Yes, we do. And that's a good thing too. Okay, I'm going to have, well, I guess we're going to launch into it. It's a little early. Do we think that other people would want to be dialing in and listening to this? Shall we tread water for a minute? What do you think,
2 minutes.
Nathan?
We're 2 minutes. No, we're
We're
12 minutes early.
12 minutes
We could
early.
jump into, wanted to start with town administrator report.
Yes, let's do the 10 minutes of town administrator report, if that's okay with you, Ryan.
Work for you.
Go for it.
All right, thank you. So updates on the conference rooms, the Heald and Parlin conference room upgrades are scheduled and ordered with November as the expected installation period. So this will be touch view screens and Zoom logins and automatic cameras for people to hold in-person conference meetings. And my phone is texting. Sorry. So that the meetings can flow smoother and people can book the rooms and have their public meetings organized in that way. So we think that'll make our boards and committees happy and also our employees for sure. Also, we're messing with the audio volume in the room, as you hopefully can hear tonight. We are hoping the people online can hear a little better, and then we will be testing new microphone solutions. So trying to make sure that this meeting is as open and transparent as possible.
And Ryan, I can tell you the audio is coming through really clear and crisp. Thank you.
Interestingly, you're quieter, but
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think that's a you thing. Some human resource updates from the assistant town administrator. So the Board of Health has extended an offer to Janine Bloom, a familiar name to town, to serve as the health assistant. Janine has been working with the CPC, the Historical Commission, the MSC for the last couple of years. Very capable assistant plus. So she will be value add to the health department, working 30 hours a week in that role. And then later in this report, I'm going to be asking you about filling Janine's position, which is going to be impossible because of what we feel about Janine, but also some plans and ideas for the future. And lastly, we're collecting resumes and cover letters for the assistant town clerk position, and then also the land use assistant position that's open from Gretchen Gallimore's promotion to executive assistant. So lots of movements. The board will be happy to hear I met with representatives from the town's faith organizations to discuss formalizing the relationship between the town and the organizations in terms of parking lot usage and associated plowing in the winter. This is something the board asked me to look into. I'll be recommending that the board sign a formal contract with each organization granting plowing services in exchange for the following uses. So driver's training for all of our departments, landing zone for medical air transportation, overflow parking, emergency management and associated trainings, fire department hose testing. And I had to understand what that was myself. So they have to unravel the 100 feet of hose. And the only place we can do that on public land or non-public land right now is the church parking lots. Town departmental training and equipment testing, and then other community events, both municipally oriented like vaccine administration when necessary, or also community gatherings. So the relationship has always existed this way. This isn't new. This is just formalizing the relationship. The Attorney General's office did ask us to formalize this, and the board will be asked whether or not this is an agreement they want to enter into. It'll be a 3-year contract. So this isn't in front of you tonight, but just an update on that effort. And I also included a copy of the agreement in the packet. Happy to announce that I'll be doing community office hours at Ferns on November 14th. So I'll be available from 9 to 10. I'll as long as there isn't 1,000 people, I'll buy everyone coffee and we can talk about the town. I would do it if there was 1,000 people, but you know, my wife would not be happy. And then at that time, I hope to also schedule other quarterly hours in the public, so people don't necessarily have to come to town hall if they want to have an open discussion with me. The MAPC regionalization study, which was in front of this board last year, and after a few stops and starts because of staffing at APC, has started to reach out to our departments to gather information. So if the board and the public remember, this is to understand how towns like Carlisle regionalize or centralize services. So a first step in what the board wanted to look into, and in some respects, the finance committee regionalization efforts that the town may want to consider, not will consider, but may want to. We expect to have a final report in late December, early January. The goal of that would be to identify any areas that you wanted to in-depth study. So this is a very small study, a high-level study that would lead to another one if there was any interest in a specific regionalization. For the fire station renovation project, we have a designer selection committee. The bids are coming in tomorrow. So we'd be looking for a member of the select board to serve as the rep on the selection committee.
When would that be likely to be taking place or being, the selection?
We'd be having an initial meeting next week. So that would be make sure I don't speak out of turn. I'm sorry, that would be November 13th, not next week.
That's a Monday.
Yes.
Okay.
So I know Travis is the liaison, or if any of you are interested in serving on that.
It seems like we should know what Dave and Travis would want before providing that feedback to you, but
Well, or if you can't
unless they've
make it,
already told you.
I'm also, if we needed somebody, I'm available to.
yeah, as
part
I'm
of
on.
So would you like me to ask Travis with one of you as a backup? You can fight it out?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. So I talked about this earlier in the report. Janine Blum is moving on to serve as our full-time health assistant. So this creates 3 part-time vacancies: the Historical Commission assistant, the Community Preservation Committee assistant, and the Municipal Facilities Committee assistant, all rolled up into one title, municipal assistant. I'd like to bring to the board in November 2 options for filling this vacancy. The first is a budget neutral option of hiring a part-time assistant to complete all 3 tasks. So this would be a 19-hour position similar to the one we have now. The positives of that is it's budget neutral. The negatives is we don't expand service, and we certainly would have difficulty filling that position because of the hours. Doesn't mean we shouldn't try and that we wouldn't get lucky with somebody. The second is to make it a full-time position. This would be anywhere from 20 to 30 hours. that would serve these boards and other land use boards with that don't have staff support, such as the Affordable Housing Committee. And would, in times that they're not supporting other committees, would be serving planning functions under the direction of our town planner. So we do believe this would be an administrative level position, and the best guess at cost, assuming we would be able to classify it correctly, would be an additional 10,000 in the budget, which we would realize through other position changes we've made if the board wanted to move that way in the current year and or not consider it for next fiscal year. So those are two options we're going to bring. I wanted to bring that information to you prior to bringing it to you so you could think it through. All right.
Sharing the screen of that or not?
No.
So the Savoyard Light Opera Company is requesting permission to display a banner over School Street to announce the days of the play that's being put on by the Carlisle School. The request is for October 24th, which is tonight, all the way to November 19th. So this would go up tomorrow, and looking to see if the board supports that with a motion.
We haven't approved that for anybody else at all during that period of time, have we?
No.
Okay. I move to approve the Savoyard Light Opera Company's request to display a banner over School Street from October 24th, 2023 to November 19th, 2023.
Second,
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote.
Arnold, I.
Brown eye.
Model I.
Reed, aye.
All right, and I sent the board this week a communication from the CCA working group. DPU responded to the letter that the board through the working group sent in terms of the new regulations and guidelines. This was being organized by our private vendor, but supported by many communities. The response to the state's response is due, and the working group is asking that we attach our name to the group response, saying these are areas of concern. So I'm looking to see if the board will support us sending that on behalf of the working group. We were unclear whether or not that was already part of their charter. We just wanted to make sure the board didn't have any issue with that, and we would send that communication forward.
Remind everybody what the CCA working group is, please.
So the Community Choice Aggregation Working Group assists the select board and assists myself and by proxy the select board in administering and advertising the Community Choice Aggregation Contract, which provides a set rate and more sustainable options for energy use in town. DPU is recommending some regulations that our vendor and our CCA working group believe would hurt the value of that contract. So we're responding and saying, please don't do that.
And Ryan, I question, you said that you're looking for support or approval from the board to send that letter on behalf of the select board to the DPU? Because I thought we'd already done that.
Yeah, I thought we had to.
So we would be assigning our town name to the response. So I don't believe we need a vote for it. I just want to make sure you don't want me to not do that.
Oh,
I'm
I would
fine with it.
do it.
yeah, I see no reason not to do it and every reason to do it.
You know, I don't like to surprise you, so we'll send that
Okay,
forward,
good.
seeing no objection. We held last week our quarterly all chairs meeting. So Aubrey hosted this, did a great job. The meeting started with presentations to board chairs about the FY25 budget process, updates from town meeting, which happened just a few days earlier, and updates about the town's larger capital projects, and a review, most importantly, of the upcoming employee review process. So as the board knows, employee reviews are done by multiple boards, committees, and people in town. So we want to make sure, since the board and the FinCom tied step increases to evaluations as part of a larger effort to hold employees accountable and also to develop them professionally, that they understood their responsibilities here. So no evaluation, no step raise. Employees will be coming to them to make sure they have their evaluation done, and we wanted them to be prepped and have the proper support to complete those. The chairs then shared information from their boards, which was good. A lot of cross communication, a lot of talk about some big initiatives like MVP planning, green communities, the accessory apartment bylaw discussions. So a lot of crosstalk amongst committees, which I think is important as we tackle some of these bigger problems. And then lastly, some upcoming discussion points. For the board, I talked about the church contracts. This will be coming in front of the board for a decision. So I'm asking to read the agreements and send any concerns, be prepared to discuss those contracts. We do owe a report to the Attorney General's office on our progress on that. Although we're not under any particular deadline, they do want to see us making progress. The Greeno Barn, Julie and I will present an invitation for bid for the Greeno Barn deconstruction project. This will be publicly available and sent to relevant boards and committees for comment prior to your meeting. And we do expect some of them to attend and have this discussion with you on the deconstruction of the Greeno Barn. As we mentioned previously, we do believe that the RFP will meet a lot of the discussions that happened during the budget process, allowing this to be a very, very sustainable removal and a win for the town rather than just simply destroying the barn for a relatively good cost. Also asking the board to consider some new committees, some discussions that had come up previously and some things we're recommending. So these would include considering a cemetery task force similar to the TSAC for organizing our cemetery efforts and thinking beyond the current year to a 5, 10, 20-year strategic plan for the cemetery. The audit committee is requested by the select board, a board appointment committee or not, depending on your policy discussions, and then a traffic revamping, not recreating the traffic safety committee. So we've been getting a lot of requests from the community that a traffic safety committee could work on for you and then bring recommendations to the board, such as adding streetlights, taking away signs, adding speed bumps, slowing down people. All of these things should be considered and weighed before they come to you. The ESC is requesting a charter revision based on some membership changes you made, nothing significant except for the membership. And then they have a proposal for a native plant garden in front of the town hall that they would like you to consider in preparation for next spring's planting season. We're having an initial discussion about the fire and police chief's public evaluations and how you want those to be shaped. And then the tax classification hearing will be coming up. We're recommending that you invite the Board of Assessors to also participate in a discussion about the Deckhouse Advisory Working Group's findings, which we presented to you not too long ago now. And then for my employee and public recognition, I'd like to thank some key players from the annual town meeting. First, Wayne and Peggy deserve a tremendous amount of credit, not only for being on stage, unlike the rest of us, but also for running a smooth and binding process. There was a lot of technical aspects to a very small warrant, and they handled them all, I believe, with transparency and efficiency. So both of them deserve a great deal of credit for that. Also, the school and cable staff for their hard work leading up to the meeting and their follow-up to make sure the meeting was accessible for those who could not attend. I'd like to thank Gretchen for her work on the warrant, Aubrey for helping run the meeting, Kelly for her work preparing the facts and figures, town council for their dedication to the words, Julie for her dedication to the information session, and Barney and Travis for helping the staff put together the information session, and Bill Rizzo, who actually ran the votes in the back, volunteering. What does he not do? And then all the staff that attended the meeting, they were not asked to come up, but they did devote their personal time. So blessed to work with such professionals in this community. Thought it was a good town meeting, a lot of good discussion, and I was proud to be a part of it.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm going to
Thank-
remind you that the schools are asking us to approve use of town comment on Friday.
Thank you. It says right here, don't forget. So this did come up in between meetings and after our posting deadline, but we think it's important. So on Friday, October 27th from 5 to 5:30 p.m. That's Friday. CPS Belonging Project will host a community togetherness vigil on the town common to bring people together for collective humanity on the Carlisle Common. Members of the community are reeling from the horrific violence in Israel and Gaza. U.S. communities are seeing both rising Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, and divisions that are arising can tear communities apart. We've seen this throughout moments in history. This will be an event open to all community members, will be age appropriate for children. Rachel Freed from the Carlisle Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Community Advisory Council will lead us in lighting candles, and she will share a short, broad reflection on the importance of honoring the inherent dignity of every human being. The violence in the world will be broadly acknowledged. The event is designed for our community to be together during a difficult moment for many. And we have sent a request for approval from FRS as well, and we do expect that to be granted.
Could I have a motion to grant use? Do we have it? Is it outlined anywhere, or shall we just wing this? I'm looking for a motion to approve the use of the town common on Friday night for a vigil.
I move that the select board approve the use of the town common for Friday night, this Friday night, for a community vigil.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Arnold, I.
Brown eye.
Model I.
Reed, aye. Great, thank you. So now we're 5 minutes behind schedule, but
Madam Chair, before you go on, can I just make one comment on the town administrator report?
surely,
Just the last paragraph about the annual town meeting. I just hope that we will have a chance, obviously not on this agenda, but at some time in not too long, to discuss both the information session and the feedback we got, as well as the overall town meeting, just so we can evaluate and figure out what's, what impact it had and what we might want to do for the spring town meeting. Thanks.
right, thanks. We almost always do that generally we have Wayne come in and. Okay. So now we're at our 7:20 financial forecast. Would the FinCom like to call their meeting to order?
Yeah, we can all sit up here. Yeah.
Why don't you give them that table too?
And you have this table as well that's available.
Swatch the mic. Bring
Yeah.
the mic with you, you'll need it.
They can sit right there.
They can just sit right here. Doesn't have.
That's fine too.
Pretty much all of us are there. I'd like to call the meeting to order for FinCom, joint meeting with Select Board. If I could have a roll call, please.
Here. Pistachio here. Gentleman here.
Leanne here.
Lipinski here,
Over here.
and nobody's on the phone.
We don't see anyone though.
7 of you. How many? Yeah.
Yep.
You're all here.
We're missing. Oh. So we're good.
Okay.
All right, I will zoom in and also show the underlying tool that created this presentation. And please stop me at any time. The intent of this is to share information that helps you shape your budget understanding and goals. So the 3 legs of proper financial management in any municipal community are its financial policies, its ability to financially forecast its expenses and revenues, and then capital planning. So you will remember last month, we went through an extensive capital planning model that showed relative assumptions in cost and a recommended funding plan that allowed you to understand the larger picture of capital funding and then make your own policy decisions within the model and tool. One of the lines in that capital planning model was the ability to hold the budget to generally a 3% increase annually, which I said at the time was something that had a tremendous amount of variables. So this entire presentation is that one bullet. It's the idea that you would control your operating expenses in order to intentionally or unintentionally generate free cash, which would allow you, and then control your debt, which would allow you to fund that capital plan. I'd also like to thank Craig and David for helping me think through this presentation and how it would be best presented to you for discussion. So what you're seeing on this first slide, and I will show the underlying tool, I promise, is a forecasting of expenses for the town. So the pie chart you see is the relative breakout, or is the breakout of the FY24 budget, so our current budget year. And it matches some variables that were applied to a model to demonstrate what would happen if all of those parts of the pie chart were increased by these numbers. So the numbers include 2.5% for town services or contracts, 2.5% for employee support, and 2.5% for supplies. So every line that's attached to those would be increased by 2.5%, which doesn't happen in every budget year, but it is something to plan for, especially when you consider things like the way inflation is impacting fuel and others. It would be conservative to make sure you're increasing those lines. Next, moving on the bottom right bubbles there, you'll see COLA in this COLA or personnel increase in cost that is forecasted at 3%. and then 3.5% for the regional school assessment and the Carlisle Public Schools assessment. And then lastly, some of our mandatory spending items are retirement insurance and health insurance, all projected at 10%. I know this seems like a high number, but we already know that health insurance is going up by 10% based on initial conversations we've had, and we expect insurance and retirement to be near there. One of the main reasons why retirement is going up at such a high level is we're paying our OPEB portion in that retirement for the next 15 years as we catch up. So that assessment is going to be inflated by quite a bit annually. So if you apply all of these forecasted variables to our expenses, you'll see the chart on the right. If there was a perfect world according to this model and everything increased by the exact amount shown, which was never happened in the history of towns, but it could, you would see budget increases of 3.64% for the next 2 years, and then a bubble year in FY27. This is related to projected, again, a much larger increase in the regional school assessment based on enrollment. And then it would drop down again to 3.69 and then 3.73% in FY29. So as we stated during the capital planning, if 3% was the goal, with these relatively modest increases, it would be difficult to hit that 3% number. I'll stop there if there's any questions on that.
What's employee support?
Yeah, I was gonna ask that.
So employee support includes things like mileage, professional development, and training. It is by far the smallest category, but we have seen those size increases in the IRS mileage rate and other policies that we have.
I mean, it's actually so small, it doesn't even show up on your pie
It
chart.
doesn't show up on the pie chart.
So 2% of nothing is, you
Yeah, I mean,
know,
that's, I think that that chart, can you put that back up, Ryan? The chart kind of symbolically shows the conundrum, right? I don't need it. I want other people to see it.
okay,
You know, the big blue and the big orange, if you
yes,
scroll down just a little bit, Ryan. There, stop there. So, you know, CPS and the regional school are 2/3. We know that, right? 2/3 of the budget. And they have drivers that are in typically the 3.5% range. Ms. Wilson is here and she can comment if she wants to. Okay.
We have 3 numbers.
Okay. All right. So don't comment. But, those are the big drivers. And then the stuff we have no control virtually over, retirement insurance, health insurance, they're not huge pieces of the pie, but, they all get increases that are foisted upon us without much say-so on our behalf. And then those little parts there, those little tiny slices, we can control that. We can hammer those down to 2 or 2.5%, but so what?
but that's in the noise, exactly. So 1%,
That encapsulates the entire problem. And then the personnel is what we can control.
yeah, 1% of those big numbers is a much bigger number than 10% of the small number, which is why personally, I don't like working with percentages because people get,
Right, but it does show you,
flummoxed.
it shows you like those drivers, and it doesn't show what Ryan also alluded to, which is the ratio, what do they call it? Assessment ratio. I mean, you don't see it right there because you'd have to have a time-phased pie, but if the regional budget goes up 3.5% and our assessment ratio swings in the unfavorable way, it's like a 6%. Or,
yes.
I mean, if Scott was here, he could probably rattle that off on top of his head, but.
So the underlying tool for that section, if you take all of these variables here, I can adjust any of those variables to any amount, and it will filter through. You can see the colors as they relate to the various categories. So if we change that number, all the numbers in there filter through for the next 5 years. So that's the underlying tool for the presentation, just so you know what we're looking at.
I guess for me, what would be interesting to see is if instead of a 3.5%, the school's got a 3%, how much difference would that?
Yeah, and I can show you some of that modeling as we move through here.
Okay.
So another interesting exercise in this tool is how that relates to our revenue. So the main tax revenue the town has is its ability to increase taxes by 2.5%. And then new growth is added into that number for the annual amount that revenue increases for taxes. this model includes a very conservative projection for state aid and local receipts. Those numbers, state aid and local receipts equal about $3 million in a $35 million budget. So even a 1 or 2% increase is not going to save the town, as they say. So those revenue sources are not very strong. So the primary revenue sources for Carlisle are its taxes. So if you look at this blue line here, this demonstrates what the town can tax if it wants to. That is its max levy, right? The amount that it can tax. The orange is what it does tax. So what this chart is showing is if we continue to spend the way we're spending or the way this model projects, then the excess levy capacity that the town has enjoyed will disappear in 5 years. So that means in years 6, 7, and 8, you would rely only on the new revenue that you can in town in order to increase taxes, or you would have to have an override in order to increase the revenue. So you can right now increase or decrease the taxes because of that excess levy capacity, but at these spending levels, that would disappear in 5 to 6 years. So what this tells someone like me is there is no immediate concern in FY25, but if you do not attack some of these issues now, you will pay the price in 5 to 6 years. You can see the numbers in excess levy capacity along the bottom of that chart go from 1.6 million to 3.69. So that's how you were affording 369,000. Yep.
Just one question here. So this does not include capital expenses, things we put through warrants.
Correct.
So it could be even quicker.
Oh, yeah.
So
Because
as
we have some fairly big items coming. I can't remember what you had forecast previously and how that overlays this. But I would suspect that would close a little faster if we included that.
So one thing in the capital plan was you could loosen your revenue assumptions or make them less conservative, which would allow you to increase the revenue that's available for the operating budget, but it would decrease your free cash and your ability to fund the capital
Right.
plan. So it's all connected.
Yep.
I mean, it's a good segue, Victor, to, I mean, this is the second of like 3
Mhm.
training sessions, if you will. The first one was on the capital planning model that Ryan developed and showed kind of what if, I'll just remind everybody, that's kind of balancing the use of free cash, like keeping free cash in reserve to buy capital items, to make hard choices about whether we add new debt or we simply pay as we go. This one's about the operating side of the budget. And then the third one will be kind of putting the two pieces together, and then you can play those games, right? The tools will now allow us to do those what ifs, right? Do we use free cash to keep that gap at a healthy gap, or do we, use it on capital and it narrows faster, to your point? I mean, those are the kind of things, the decisions that we all have to make. We've made for all the years, but better tools now.
And to confirm, this expense forecast includes keeping the debt load constant.
Yes.
Is that correct? So there's, as we will pay down debt and have additional debt capacity, but this assumes constant. So that, what does that work out to be?
It's about 2 million in it's $2 million in borrowing power. 4 million really. Remember, we recommended 2 million in costs. So there's 2 million of extra borrowing ability in that budget baked in. So you could decrease that in order to spend somewhere else, but then you wouldn't be able to borrow or do your capital planning.
But your point, Victor, that some of that's baked in.
Hard to hear unless you speak into the mic.
Nope.
Apologies.
You're gonna have to
Let's give him one.
get yourself up there. Get it right up.
Yeah, I was calling out that the expense forecast contains, assumes that we keep our debt load the same as it is now, and we're paying down our debt. So this assumes that we will continue to take out more debt as we go on to the same level that we have now, which assumes that we have 4 million or so plus and minus to cover some of the additional capital needs that the town has. So.
Just briefly for those who like to see the math, which I hope we all do. So these are that local receipts line. So each line is tied to some markers. So we took local receipts for the last 5 years, created an actual average, and then compared to the way we're projecting it. So currently we are projecting at 83% of the 5-year average. If you increase that to 90%, meaning you said we were going to loosen our revenue assumptions, increase that to 90%, which is best practice number, you would gain that percentage of the 1.8 that are available in local receipts. But again, it's not going to solve the gap or the deficit. It would just help a little bit, but you would generate less free cash. So it's a policy decision. All right, and then everybody's favorite part is some tax impact. All right, so I would like to caution people that this is using this year's tax rate and a lot of assumptions about how the tax rate filters to the community through assessment value, et cetera. There's a lot to this. There's a master's degree on this. But this is, if you held it constant, what would the budget impact to the tax rate be for these budget decisions that are made here? As you can see, the expense increase needed to meet the demand that this forecast is projecting for FY25 would be a $1.4 million levy increase, or a 4.34% tax increase to the average taxpayer, of a $743 increase to a total average tax bill of $17,124. So that means your average house in Carlisle, 1.1 million, would see a $743 increase based on the budget alone. That can go up or down based off the assessment value of the house, but that's just the budget impact. So last year, the FinCom and the Select Board spent a lot of time trying to keep that number around 3. So this includes a significant amount of cuts that would need to be made in this projection in order to meet that number.
There's an assessment. To be fair, this is an assessment ratio adjustment year, right? With the region. Isn't coming up.
I don't know what that means.
Well, we look at, gee, it was 2.75 and now it's 4.3. Doesn't high school assessment ratio play a big role in that?
And the use
This year.
of, so we offset that by free cash. So yes and no.
Okay, yes and no. Okay,
These are the raw numbers.
yeah.
So
So
this
you guys
does-
have your work cut out for you.
Yeah.
Get to work.
I got some thoughts. I don't know if you like them, but we'll see in the next meeting.
So this tool can do whatever we want it to, but I just wanted to show just some simple analysis. So of the 1.4 in projected costs, and that is conservative inflated. So there is some ability to level fund and level service to drive that number down. But to get to a 3% tax increase based off this year's tax rate, there would need to be almost $500,000 cut out of that expenditure forecast to meet that 3% increase. If you were to keep your budget at a 3% increase, which is what the capital plan recommended, then you would need to cut $220,000 in spending out of these projected costs. And if you wanted to match just the revenue, so just the revenue that's coming into the town annually, then you would need to cut a little over $500,000 from this budget to match incoming revenue. So you're spending more than you're taking in. Some of those decisions have been made intentionally, and some of it is possible, but if you don't control it, it will get out of control. So this isn't a doom and gloom, but it is a call to action, if you will.
Something confusing about the sign convention there. Can you go back through? If we match, because you got 1 positive and 2 negatives, so maybe I missed how you were explaining that.
They all mean the same. I know they're different colors. I just wanted to.
Okay. So they're all cuts to the budget.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. I just didn't want to change the whole tool to.
I see. Okay. But they're all cuts. So basically keeping a 3, if we wanted to make as a goal, which we've talked about in the past, that the average tax bill would be at 3%. That means cutting $500,000 out, which is the same kind of as saying matching revenue, roughly.
Correct. Yeah.
But if we were saying, well, we will only increase the budget by 3%. Can you just explain the difference between those two things?
So that would mean the average tax bill would go up by about 3.5 to 3.75%, not 3. If you were just to keep
Because of the capital component?
no, just operating.
The mix of revenue.
But why is that
Yeah, I
why is that a smaller number then?
Yeah.
If it's going up more, it should be a bigger number.
So
Or is that an additional 220 that you would have to cut?
So no, it would be what you need to cut to get the budget from the 3.67% increase to 3%, but it will, yeah. Well, it's 220. To get it down to 3% tax bill would be significantly less. You'd have to cut.
I guess that what we're asking, Ryan, is why, what else is in there? If the budget's 3% and everything else is level, then the tax would be 3%. So something else must be going on here to make the tax bill rise more than the budget. Is it capital? Is it assessment ratio? What's in there that we're not counting?
It's the revenue mix. It's revenue that's added and then additional expenses in the levy.
Because the other two revenue lines aren't also going to go up by 3%.
Right. They're not only going up by 1%. Ah,
Yeah.
okay, that's right.
We should-
So it's the, yeah, that's the difference there.
Got it. All right.
Okay.
Sorry.
So
just
the tax, so basically,
brains think the same.
let's say it a different way. Because the assumption is that state aid and local receipts only go up by 1%, and we can argue that. But if you accept that, you're automatically saying that there will be a higher, the percentage tax increase will be higher than the budget increase.
Yes.
Right. That's the important. Okay.
Thank you. So just some general points, and this is not to insult anybody, just to conclude before you have your discussion, I'm hoping about some budget goals. Because Carlisle budgets with significant levy capacity, town officials should select a guiding metric, whether that is the average tax bill, a percent increase of the budget, or a tie to revenue, in order to establish goals that are easily disseminable to the department so that you can match it, and then you can compare expenses to expenses. Your current spending levels will eliminate your excess levy capacity, which would essentially reduce town services in 5 to 6 years. The revenue estimates are deliberately conservative. We can increase them to make the picture look better, but that does have an impact on the capital side, and you should be intentional when doing that. New spending initiatives, I know this sounds relatively easy, but new spending initiatives should include offsets. So when people ask for new money, they should tell you how they're going to save money in order to make sure you're not climbing every time you add something. Significant borrowing for capital projects is not included. So there is 4 million baked in, as Craig said, but the larger building projects are not included in that tax analysis. Spike years caused by CCRHS enrollment shift should be planned for. The next one is in 3 years. I think this year's model was a good one, saving up some free cash use to make sure that curve is smooth, because it is a significant spike and then a return. So that is controllable if you plan for it. And every 200,000 in new spending equals about $100 added to the average tax bill. Just something to consider. So if you add 200,000 in spending, it's about $100 to your tax bill, just to frame decisions. And how does this align with the capital plan? So this forecast would generate the 500,000 to 800,000 in free cash. You could change the assumptions and generate less to allow for operating budget to be less constrained, right? That would lower the average tax bill, but it wouldn't generate that free cash, which you are going to need to overcome some capital deficits. These projections maintain debt capacity, which we talked about at length already, thanks to Craig. And then the tax impact, again, does not include the building renovation projects. So you can expect $48 added to the average tax bill for every 1 million you spend in construction projects.
So what's the good news? We have a great model.
Yeah,
So honestly, the good news is that there's time to make adjustments and changes, whereas most towns say, what is our free cash? And we spend to that max capacity. They don't have a lot of flexibility to either cut in services or getting lucky with state aid. We're not at that level. So there are some controls to put in place that would allow this to be much smoother over time. And it is conservative. So hopefully the good news is, hey, we were a little too conservative and we can relax it a little bit, but that's not, a great way to budget.
If I can just add a few comments to what Ryan is saying, I think obviously we say this every year, we've got to sharpen the pencils. We've got to really be disciplined about trying to close this gap. But I think more importantly, we need to be open-minded. Everything should be on the table. There should not be any assumptions in terms of what annual expense increases should be. And we need to really dig real deep starting this year in terms of every department to see what we can centralize, where there are cross purposes, and nothing should be nothing should be off the table is my point. If you read between the lines, and I think we have to just really be diligent this year and really dig deep into these budgets. And just be open-minded about it.
I would agree with that completely. I mean, because, I'm trying to get my head around a little bit of, we have excess now. And so, maybe we could spend, when we have 5 to 6 years, we're going to have a serious problem. It seems like we have to, we have to start cutting now. And think really, really carefully about the things that we're adding. That we're committing to for a long time. I think that we do sometimes tend to say, oh, well, we'll just do this for this year. But that never comes back out of the budget. Once you put it in the budget, it's in the budget. And, I think we just need to be really, 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 really careful and analyze everything. But could you talk a little bit more about the excess and, how that impacts our, I guess it's our debt rating or, our ability to borrow?
Excess.
Excess levy capacity. So it's a little theoretical modeling, but essentially the town has approved tax increases in the past that it did not actually tax. So you said to the town, we're going to tax you here, and you ended up taxing lower. So that creates capacity. Capacity is a good thing. It gives you a lot of budget flexibility. So if 1 year you want to go up 2.7% rather than just the 2.5, you can. And it's considered another type of reserve. So Carlisle is very lucky in that way. When we talk at DOR levels, they say having that excess levy capacity is a good thing. It means the budget has been well kept, or your spending has been controlled. But the trends in spending in the town are showing that excess is disappearing because you're overspending your revenue. So eventually you are using that capacity to keep your service levels at the expense level that you've set them, and your revenue will catch up. So it could be that every year you go out in this forecast, it's more and more, it's less efficacy. So it could be 3 years, it could be 7 years, but we're projecting it's 5 to 6, it could be 10 years, right? It depends on how you control it and spend it.
Okay.
I mean, it
So
gives.
it's not really an excess of anything other than our ability to charge a higher tax rate.
Right. It's political expediency. Some of you will remember back in the bad old days, right, where we faced possible overrides. Many towns face overrides annually because they have zero in that balance. And that's a vote of the people, which it should be. And it's often a difficult vote. And if it fails, it results in real cuts. I mean, what, Lynn's talking about, like really cutting because you have no choice. So there's political flexibility, maybe is a better word, to having levy capacity because it allows us, all of us here, to do the scenario planning. And, we still have to sell it to the voters and we have to believe it. And we do. I think we do that. But we're not facing like an override vote. We're not facing like a cliff about it. Furthermore, I would say it's one of, I don't know, 4 or 5 levers that are fiscally prudent. We could contribute to the OPEB trust. Nobody's forcing us. That's extra money we decide we're salting away for a rainy day. The stabilization fund, which we keep high, the, free cash balance we talked about. Now maybe managing free cash to smooth the assessment ratio bump. So at every little step of the way, we've built in these little pockets where we have flexibility. But now, and I would say one other thing for historical reference. I think one reason we are where we are is because we've chronically underspent on the capital side.
Yes.
So we've gotten away with it by just not spending. And, we're waking up to the fact that we can't keep doing that. So if we're going to catch up on the capital side, then we do, to Lynn's point, have to make an adjustment on the operating side.
Yeah, I guess I would say that, totally understand what you're saying. We have the funds that we're contributing to where we're trying to stay ahead of things. And I think that's great. I don't think that those are the first place we should go to look for where our cuts are. Because those are things we can pull back in an emergency. But if we're just continuing to commit to ongoing expenses, eventually those aren't even going to be there for us. Where, so our average tax bill is how much again?
What, 16 now, or it'll be 17? Let's see.
In FY 24, it's 16,381.
Any idea where that lands statewide?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay.
I have our comp towns though.
It would seem that that's probably pretty high.
It is.
Yes.
Right,
It's in the band of the comp towns,
Yeah.
but it is high.
right.
High among 360 something towns. Not in the middle, as far as I recall, from maybe the 20 town, if you curate a list of, Concords, we're kind of in the mix, I think.
Right. And but just so thinking about like the affordability of Carlisle. If we go for an override or if we go from a 3% to 3.5%, that's a much bigger number here than it is in a lot of other towns. And we're just making it much harder for people to age in place.
Well, and again, and I totally agree. And the thing, as Ryan alluded at the end, we're looking at 2 public safety buildings. The metric he said was $49 per million, right? I'm not going to say here what we think the estimate is going to be, but it's likely to be in the teens anyway for the pair of projects, right? So you could do that math. That's excluded that. So that's a vote, of course, but it doesn't count here. It's just extra tax bill, right? It'll just be an extra tax bill that everybody has to pay on top of all this stuff. Because that's not been, as Ryan mentioned, we've planned in here for the basic quantum or basket of capital projects that we looked at last time. Remember that long list, and there were like, I don't know, 40 items over the next few years. They're in there from the use of free cash and debt, but the building project's not. So we got to keep that, in the back of our mind.
I have a comment on the about the average tax bill, or kind of a question. In the past, it's been said that looking at the average tax bill is not that helpful, and that it would be more useful to look at, the median, or be able to sort of group numbers of taxpayers, into categories. And I'm just wondering if would that be useful to understand where the impact falls in those tax increases?
Yeah, that's a good point. Statistics are interesting.
I believe that's what I meant by the guiding metric to select. So whatever tool you select to monitor how the expenses are distributed, we can build into any model, and then it'll help you make your decisions a little easier. So what is the impact of adding this, subtracting this? Selecting that metric is really important.
Yeah.
So I think hopefully coming out of this tonight, and I know that you probably need to think about this, but it would really be helpful to have some pretty clear guidelines in terms of where you're coming down. What are your priorities and important? I mean, FinCom, I haven't talked to our committee yet, but there's definitely things that a lot of areas I think that we could improve upon going through this budget cycle, and I think going forward. So it's really important, I think, and I know we say this every year, but this is literally going to be a joint effort this year. We are going to work, I think, very, very closely, even more so than last year, in a good way too. And I think there'll be a lot of good that'll come out of this. Again, I still need to talk to the committee so that we can make some recommendations to you in terms of where, what our recommendations could be on a reserve fund, most likely somewhere north of 11%. As we talked about, making sure that we're marrying that capital plan in terms of what we plan for with the financial model, what a good free cash estimate may look like, and look at those reasonably what those increases and those scenarios will look like while trying to keep a level set budget. So there's a lot of goals that we have to work fairly quickly to pull together, but it would be really helpful to hear from the board what's important to everybody here. Anybody have anything to add on FinCom?
Anybody from select board?
It'd be good to maybe building on Lynn's point, Ryan, just kind of walk through the calendar, the budget calendar, and so when do we need to set those guidelines? When does FinCom get to work, et cetera?
So the department requests will be going out in early November. So between this meeting and next meeting to start gathering the budget details, they'll be due by the end of November with a first draft assembled for the FinCom, the select board, and by December 12th, which is your meeting in December. And then the FinCom will engage with their meetings with departments to really flush out and dig into those department requests in January. And then February and March, you have scheduled meetings to go over warrant articles and how the budget filters in per the annual process, which leads into an April town meeting, which we may or may not talk about, but it seems to be moving up, not farther away. So it's a little compressed at the end.
But more specifically, the hard work. So by the time you get to, when are the marathon sessions? February?
We'd probably do them a little earlier. I'd like to do them in January.
Right.
Yeah.
So Lynn, you want like hard work done ahead of time or after we hear from them?
No, ahead of time.
Okay,
I think
so
we
that-
have to set some solid guidelines.
Okay, so I think that really pushes the work into December, right? And maybe part of January.
Are you going to give some consideration to maybe doing your marathon sessions on a Saturday and have everybody in the same room at the same time? Because I think it would also be important for all the town departments to hear all the other town departments, rather than to feel that they're just standing alone.
We would certainly be open to that.
Bring pizza.
We always bring pizza.
Bagels in the morning and pizzas in the afternoon. Yeah, right. Whatever.
Or just have it on a
Zoom.
weekday. If
Or
it's
have it-
staff you want to have there, it'd
weekday,
be
right.
better on them to have it as a weekday.
It's
thing.
hard on the nighttime.
But then we have the committee members that may not be, you know.
Yeah, but one,
Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
The thing is, I
No, it's a
just
good
think it
idea.
would be important that everybody
Yeah.
have that experience. So that's one thing. And then I guess the other thing is when we have our discussions about, are we talking about the average tax rate, the median tax rate? Are we talking about, the increase in the budget or the increase in the tax rate? I've heard in the past that, our schools keep our property values high, but at a certain point, there might be a point at which the tax rate gets so high that the property values come down. And I think they've already actually been depressed a little bit when you see the same house like in Concord or, as Carlisle because of the taxes being lower. So I think that's something else that we want to maybe keep in mind.
Yeah.
that's the thing. It gets back to the affordability.
Yeah, exactly. The affordability.
Yeah, but that's a hard, I agree in theory, but that's a pretty hard sort of calculus. I think the way we've approached it in the past is just kind of the common sense way, right? Like what would people, put yourself where we are, all taxpayers, like where does the pain point?
I just think we need to keep it in mind. That's
Yeah.
all I'm saying.
I'd like to ask Sarah, can you, and I think you can do this in open meeting, just generally, what's the timeline for CPS to develop its budget and then, present its budget?
Our next meeting, which is in, is November, I have to remember, we just changed the date, but that's going to be the first look at the budget. And so.
Pretty hard to hear.
Yeah, come on.
Okay.
Gotta state your name now.
Thank you.
Sarah Wilson, South Street School Committee. We're going, our next meeting, our November meeting will be the first look at the budget.
And that's internal to school committee.
And that's internal school committee. But
it's a public meeting.
Public meeting. It'll be public meeting. And then I think, I don't want to speak out of turn on this one. Hearing is December, maybe, I think.
It's formalized to the point of hearing in December. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's usually or in early January or in late December.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll see where we are in the November meeting.
Sarah, can I ask a follow-up question there?
Maybe.
Well, I don't know if
You can ask it.
not,
Jamie
but
will answer it.
is when you talk about the school committee, taking a first look at the school budget, is that something that is provided to you by the administration? So I guess what I'm getting at is the staff work to propose the school budget? When does that get done? And I know in years past, that information has come in quite a bit later in the budget process. So I'm just interested in what you think, or what you think would be desirable this year.
But I don't know. I don't understand the question about what I think or would be desirable, but right now the staff requests are coming into the administration for the budget creation.
And so when you say you're going to take a first look at it in December, is that something that's being provided by the staff? That's what I'm asking. Are you getting a draft budget from the school at that point?
We're following, to the best of my knowledge, we are following basically the same path that we followed last year, which was an initial, everybody look at the budget in early November, and that's prepared by Jim and by the management, says TMS, Andy, who's our business guy now. And there's an opportunity there for school committee members to ask questions last year and then present again. I think last year got presented in November and then again in December, and then we had a hearing on it. I feel like we saw it twice before the hearing. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
The region's on a similar timeline. I think the first time the board committee will see it is mid-November. There's a meeting with Concord Select Board and FinCom on Thursday, but that's just a memo that they actually reviewed today at their meeting.
Okay.
So just a couple of things that I would say is, for me, the guiding principle is going to be, what is the increase going to be? I don't personally want to get into trying to analyze, what type, spreading it out as this type of home could pay more than this type of home. I think, if we wanted to do that, we should have been looking at that a long time ago. I think typically we've always done the average tax bill. I can't think off the top of my head a really, really quick way of doing it better, but you are a lot smarter about finances than I am. But for me, it really is that tax increase, particularly with what we're looking going forward. The other thing I would say is that, in the 9 years that I've been on the select board, we've added a lot of things. We've tried a lot of things. We've added some new services. It can't possibly be true that every single one of those has worked out. And so as we're talking about across all of the departments, where are we cutting, right? What have we tried that is really not cost effective? Maybe it's helping, but it's helping such a small group of people that it doesn't make sense for us to be doing it anymore. And I think we really have to have those really, really hard discussions, because we're not going to be able to make everybody happy. And we shouldn't be making everybody happy, or else we're not being leaders and making the right decisions.
As they say in Washington, you want a friend, get a dog. No, I completely agree. I think, it's time. You asked for some good news, and then we said we have a good model, and that's important, right? Ryan has provided us with tools now to do those things, to model those things, and it's on to us to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and it's also on staff and the other committees to really take a hard look at the budget, Don't assume that what's in there now is going to carry forward. Come back and say, hey, these are things we don't have to do because, either we want to reduce the taxes or we want to spend it somewhere else. I think I know where it would end up, but
Yeah, and that long-term model it's built is really helpful in that. I think for years you've seen in that memo that we put out, this is not sustainable. This is not sustainable. But we only have that we can only look 1 year at a time.
Right.
This actually very visibly shows that unless you make some decisions, you're going to run and it's not like 50 years from now. Yes. Coming up. So thank you.
I think the other thing too is that we have to take out of our vocabulary for this budget, this is how we've always done things, is out the window. That cannot stand, and we cannot have that as a rationale around budgets. And it's going to be it's going to be painful. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but we can make it happen and we can make it work. There is definitely areas for improvement. And I think we've got we've got a large committee now. We've got Ryan and his staff and everybody here. I think we're all pretty aligned that we can make this work and try and ease the tax burden for the taxpayers. I mean, it shouldn't be assumed that they're going to have this level of increase year after year after year. I mean, our new growth is limited. So something's going to have to give.
and eventually it's just going to be gone.
Correct. Yeah. Singing
I
to the
think
choir.
first they should start by cutting the FinCom and select board salaries.
Yes. 50%.
I think I would have to oppose that.
Make us pay.
Yes. We'll strike the check. The price of admission for all this fun.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? I guess we have a little time, so I would like to ask if there's anybody online or you guys are all have been talking, but that have questions, comments, or things that they need to have clarified, because I think we talk a lot in, acronyms. And if there's any of them used that anybody needs to have clarified, now would be the time.
I want to, since nobody's raising their hand, I want to go back to the
Can't see everybody.
mechanics. Well, he can. So my suggestion to Ryan, I talked about a 3-part process where we introduced capital planning, we introduced now operating planning, and put them together and this is where he was like, but a thought model for us guys to think about, and maybe how often are you meeting in these times?
We are going to be meeting weekly most likely now.
So there'll be plenty of intervals, I think, not plenty, but there are some intervals. If we could notionally peg some things, just placeholder things, both on the capital and the operating side, they're not what's going to be, but there are assumptions we can plug in now for the coming year. The coming and the other years, but just, he's given us the tool where we can make some percentage adjustments, and we can put items in, we can take items out, and begin to use the 2 pieces, right? That's the value of the 2 pieces to build those what if scenarios. We just, again, I think kind of have to do that. It's easier for you in committee maybe, but, and maybe it's a working group. That's another way to do it, where you just kind of run some scenarios and we can present them. It's not to avoid open meeting law. It's just to get a working session to kind of get familiar with the model and how the 2 pieces fit and begin to get more understanding of the trades, right? Because that's what it's going to be, right? What you're talking about is trade-offs. Well, we got to cut this, blah, blah, blah. So, that's something to consider, is whether we would form a little working group to kind of start using the model with Ryan to get a better understanding.
You look like him.
Weekly?
Sorry, I'm gonna.
How do you go?
I expect that FinCom will be using the models and come up with trade-off scenarios to present
Okay.
To make recommendations.
and recommendations, yes.
I guess one thing I would recommend is no expansion, right? So you start there, you say, that's sort of where we're going to start, no expansion. I think if we end up with the budget that you presented, we've done a good job. Because I think the real pressure are the new buildings, right? To fit in the new buildings into that model is going to be challenging without, I mean, most of the budget is payroll, right?
Right. So when you say no expansion, you mean 0%?
Oh, no, I'm saying no new FTEs.
Okay, okay, that way.
I mean, I think
No new
there's gonna be a lot
starts.
of pressure.
Yeah.
You know, like that would be a good start. So.
We did have a zero increase budget during COVID and it didn't kill us.
No, but we pushed a lot of things to the right.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
that's,
And we're providing a lot less in some areas.
I mean, I think also, like we talked about, if you think about, to Aaron's point, we need to also look at our staffing and is there any way we can cross-use them? And if there's any sort of roadblocks or hindrances because of the way the setup is, we need to look at that and think about that. Meaning if they can only work within a certain bubble, if you will, because of department constraints, but yet they're not fully utilized, to me, that's a problem. That needs to be discussed and reviewed. And I'm not saying there is any, but these are the kinds of things that I really would like us to really dig into.
I guess I'd be a little bit disappointed if in the end of this, the very first thing out of the gate was kind of like what we proposed here, because then I think that means nobody really took it seriously, that we need to rethink what we're doing and where can we cut. You know, it's like, you know, we're never going to get there if we don't have people seriously looking at their budgets.
Cuts, but I think we're lucky. No, I assume there will be cuts. I guess there's like sort of, I think my recommendation would be not ask departments for expansion ideas, you know, or really have a high hurdle rate to include, you know.
Right, but you're going to, you're going to, we've done that many years in the past.
Yeah.
Zero everything out except for
It's
salary.
not zeroing. It's you're just saying no new personnel.
For certain, you can do that, but maybe.
You're assuming a 3% COLA in sort of this time of inflation. That's pretty aggressive assumption there.
Aggressive meaning it's too low or too
I
high
think there's going to be a lot of pressure
to have
the
more.
next couple of years.
Oh,
to
yeah.
have something higher than 3%.
Right.
So I was just saying, if we end up, I'm not saying it's going to look exactly like that, but with a increase of around 3 or 3.5% for the town, I think we've done a good job, because I think there's going to be a lot of pressure to be
Right. No,
on that.
Right.
And then you really have to bake into this model soon what we think those new public safety buildings,
Right.
you know, the cost there, because otherwise you're really, I think the gap's going to be quite a bit bigger.
Well,
After you do
don't forget, that's going to be excluded debt, so it's not going to eat into your levy limit. It will just raise the tax bill.
Well, it's going to raise debt service over a period of time. It's going to affect the 5-year plan. So.
And not if it's excluded, right?
Well, you would see it, the tax increase would double because you would be adding the capital in.
More tax increase, but it wouldn't close down your levy limit gap.
No, the operating model would look great, but the
Yeah,
average
right.
tax bill would not.
No, they're right. But I just want to clarify. No, I'm not listening. I'm not advocating. I'm just saying that they're two different problems, right?
Well,
Yeah.
I think it's the tax rate, that it's the
Yeah,
tax.
the
that's-
tax
that's
rate,
The
right.
important number. That's why it always gets back
I
to.
agree.
yeah, I agree. And $48 per, you know,
Is a lot.
$1 million of
Right.
new building.
Mhm.
I think we need to remember that.
Heidi, did you want to say something? Oh, okay. I thought you
Okay.
had a comment.
So Lynn, I want to meld your comment and Aaron's comments. So you said, you know, we need direction from the select board, like that's fair, right? We're supposed to give you direction. And then, you know, I suggested maybe we'll have a working group to play around. And then Aaron said, well, no, we'll play around, which I'm okay with, but how does that fit into the direction piece? I feel like if we don't like jump on this, we're going to have these back and forth ping pong for a while. You know, time's not on our side. You want to get the hard work done, you know, in a month, right? So I'm just trying to, I'm encouraging us to think about ways to accelerate. And you said, change the process, work closely together. So I'm not sure that, I mean, it's one idea, working group, but some way of getting just a lot of familiarity between us so we really understand and play with scenarios to push on things so that we can make those guidelines or those recommendations to your committee. Then you can go back and, work it again.
Yeah, and I think when I say that, it's really more about what are your priorities? So it's not like we're asking you to throw a stake in the ground. It's really trying to understand where you're coming from. Like, what are your biggest priorities? That helps us in looking at the budget in totality when we know where you're coming from.
Yeah, and I agree with that, but I'd also say we do a lot of that sort of qualitatively,
Mhm.
and then it comes time to pay for it. So, we like environmental sustainability. It's got a cost. We like 2 new buildings. They have a cost. So without really, I mean, I'm a quantitative guy, right? So I like to have the data, like that informs me as to what I say the priorities are. I can say in a vacuum, what master plan said, right? I want open space, I want good schools. Okay, great. But when it really comes time to put the pieces together, I would find it helpful to have, the data or some sensitivity analysis around the data.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. It really helps. When I say priorities, it really helps us to see what areas we can really hone into, to see if there are areas where there's some centralization or we can leverage other areas to kind of help your goals to be met. So that's really all we're talking about. It's really those high level goals to kind of just kickstart us. But yeah, we're completely open if you wanted to do more of a joint working group session. It just really gives us a little bit of a roadmap to start from. Otherwise, we don't know where you're coming from. We may make recommendations and, as a board, you'll be completely against that. Like, that's not an area we want to even be looking at. And that's really all we're talking about, really high level to just get going a little bit.
In exercise I've been trying to do with departments that successfully, I think they're all open to it as well, is not what you need for next year, but where you think your department's going to be in 5 to 10 years. So the levers that I would push as a town administrator are not looking at what do I need to meet the current demand, but what do I think the demand of service is going to be in 5 to 10 years? And that can be difficult for employees because we're day-to-day creatures, but a good functioning department would say, okay, here's my goal I want to meet in 10 years. Here's the succession planning to get there. So succession planning is not about current employees. It's about what happens when service levels go up or down. And not telling you you're my bosses, but I would demand that with some of these requests, right? I know what your current service levels are, but what do you expect them to be in 5 years? And how does your current model match that or not? And then instead of saying we're going to fix it in FY25, you're really taking a 5-year approach and saying, okay, we didn't bite all of it off, but with our planning in place, we can extend this out instead of 5 years, maybe 10 years, and give yourself more of a chance to get there.
Yep.
I would agree with that completely. Don't look at it just year to year.
Right.
That really takes the pressure off. And I'm just being blunt. When a department head is in front of you, instead of them advocating for their job, they're advocating for the future of their department. And it changes the conversation to a mutually agreeable solution rather than, fighting for your life or fighting for your livelihood. And succession planning is also often labeled an attack on the current employee, but it really shouldn't be. It should be, okay, what happens after, post, I plan on staying for a long time, but post Ryan, right? Like, where is the town going with this position, et cetera? And it removes that personal aspect and allows you to focus on modeling and goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even, in any company, that kind of planning is key, right? That keeps your ecosystem alive. So I absolutely agree. I think it's really important. And it also makes you look at the bigger picture of the department. The department lives on. And again, it also opens up those conversations of, are there cross purposes to ensure that you've got that knowledge transfer? The knowledge transfer is just so key. So yeah, totally with you.
So how do we ask them for that?
I mean, I'll give an example, and he would be open to me discussing it, but been working with our new police chief about what does Carlisle policing look like in 2030? So in the past few years, and for good reason, the board and the town has hired seasoned officers and has valued experience over or anything in order to strengthen the department and make sure that it was secure. And I don't think I would have disagreed with that approach. But moving forward, is that the right approach in terms of cost, or should it be a mix? So you can do it slowly over time and not crush a department and just say, in 10 years, we want it to be a mix of experience and youth and mentorship, and so that there's some type of growth. Easier said than done, but a lot of the stuff that I've been trying to talk with the board about is investing in employees, making sure they stay here a little bit, creating mentorship programs, but not getting so attached that, you know, we go above and beyond our means to pay. So here's our band for this employee. Do you fit in that band? If not, then we do encourage you to go for your next opportunity, or we maybe hire a little bit less experience and let them grow. It's really easy for me to say out loud, like there's humans here as well that you have to place. And everybody in a vacuum looks at a service and says, well, we want the best. Maybe it's 85% that you accept across the board, which would be way better than most towns.
The school did something like that, right? We did picture of the student in, what was it, 2050 or 2030? I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, portrait of graduate.
Portrait of a graduate. So that was a good way to do a paradigm shift on, you know, the school's customers, I mean, they're the parents ultimately, but the students are the customer, right? So what does the student need, you know, in that time, and how will the school support it? And you could say the same thing here, like, okay, what is a citizen in the town going to need in 2040? You know, and then back into how do you provide that service level?
The way the visioning was approached was you actually speak in the present tense. It is 2030, right? It is 20, the second talk, it's past tense of years ago. But you speak about, you know, it's 2030. This is what the police department looks like, right? This is who I see on a day-to-day basis. This is the kind of calls that we get. This is, rather than speaking in the future tense of the 2030, you put yourself actually in the mindset, and then it's easier to look. And we got here by, you know, or this is what happened in our town that changed, that brought about. Yeah. So.
Okay. I'm keeping an eye on the clock. I think we've,
I think we're good.
you think you're good? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Greg, the new guy, just killed it.
Killed it.
I'm
Are we ready to adjourn?
Aye.
Okay.
Motion.
You have a motion?
To adjourn.
Okay. And who's second? James? Thank you, everyone.
We have to do roll call.
Oh, roll call.
No, you don't have to do roll call because you're all here.
Sorry.
Oh, anyway.
Bernstein and I.
That's your life.
We are.
Little bit I.
Liang, aye.
Lipinski, aye.
Over guy.
Great.
Thank you.
We're out.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Is Scott on?
The wastewater.
I'm here.
There he is. Okay, Scott. We all got an ARPA recommendation on our desk. And although it says public school wastewater treatment plant,
Oh, is that what it says? Sorry.
don't seem to have a motion for that one. But you might want to give us an update.
Yeah, Kate, before you do that, could we get that, what you have in front of you, put that up on the screen
Okay,
so others can see it? Thanks.
yeah, sorry.
So, Kate, I'll just jump in. There were two items listed on the agenda, and the ARPA committee met yesterday to discuss both items. The first is as Kate mentioned, is the Carlisle Public School wastewater treatment plant makeup air units, and the second is a cultural council request for the music festival. Beginning with the wastewater treatment plant, just to refresh everyone's memory, back in April, along with some other capital items, $58,000 in ARPA funding was approved to essentially replace the existing makeup air units. And at a very high level, what these air units do are condition the air in the equipment room that houses the treatment center, and also warms the air so that the wastewater treatment is operating at a good temperature to break down the materials. So these are essential parts of the treatment plant. They're pretty much at end of life and need to be replaced. That's a conversation we had back in April. We approved 58,000 based on some quotes that we had obtained. Since that time, the formal bidding process has occurred. The bids that came in were substantially higher than the 58,000. They came in at 84,000. And so an amended request was put forward for the 84,000. And that's what we met yesterday to discuss. We did not end up taking a vote or making a recommendation to the select board on this, due to the fact that in our discussion, one of the questions that we raised yesterday and that had been raised earlier was, is there the option? What's being bid, the 84, is essentially a one-for-one equipment replacement. And these current units run off of propane. And there had been some earlier questions about if there's a more sustainable alternative, whether an electric makeup air unit could be purchased that was more in line with our sustainability goals. Jim and Stephen were on the call. They didn't have information on what that alternative may be. And so they were going to go back to the bidding companies and ask them, A, if that was an option, and B, what would be entailed in bidding that out. And so I think overall there's support for this project, but we're waiting for more information on an alternate implementation that would be more sustainable.
Thank you. Actually, in our community input today, we got some more information about some of the carbon footprint of that whole wastewater treatment plant. So,
But the bottom line is that one isn't being proposed today, right?
that's correct.
Right. So my expectation or my hope is that we are going to meet again prior to the next select board meeting. And so my hope is that we can have a recommendation on November 14th.
Okay. So the other one is the ARPA committee, the $2,500 for the Cultural Council.
Yeah, the Cultural Council submitted a request for the Carlisle Music Festival at Old Home Day. This was done last year. There was a grant that traditionally Old Home Day had received that they're not receiving. That was for $2,500. So given they failed to receive that grant, the Carlisle Cultural Council, and I know Mark is also on the line and can speak to this, they were requesting an additional $2,500 in ARPA funds to fund specifically for the Carlisle Music Festival at Old Home Day. That's how the money would be used. And in funding that would allow the other Old Home Day festivities to proceed as planned. And they're also going to be pursuing their normal fundraising efforts. But their request was for this to cover the current shortfall of 2,500, given that the grant had not been received, the other grant. And so our committee discussed it with Mark, and then we voted to recommend the $2,500, that the select board approved the $2,500 in ARPA funds for the Carlisle Music Festival in 2024 specifically.
Anybody have any questions for ARPA?
No, well, you are recommending this one?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's on the handout, the vote and the proposed motion.
Yeah.
And I also put just the total ARPA funds remaining. And I'm gonna ask to be on the agenda for the next meeting to give a little more detail on the current ARPA balance and some funds that are being returned to the unallocated balance. So we don't need to get into that tonight, but there's roughly $150,000 in ARPA with some additional funds coming back that are unexpended from other projects.
Okay, I move the select board approves $2,500 in ARPA funds to be used for the 2024 Carlisle Music Festival at Old Home Day.
Second.
May I ask a question?
Surely.
Is this a one-time thing?
It was made very clear that this is a one-time thing. They have started some fundraising and that they'll try to, it'll give them some more time to do the fundraising they need to kind of sustain it for years going forward.
Okay.
Any other questions? It's a roll call vote.
Arnold, I.
Brown eye.
Model I.
Reed, aye. Great. Thank you. Ooh, that was okay.
Cool.
Thank you, Scott.
That's it. Thank you.
Great. I'm going to push us along to the town administrator annual public evaluation. And it's not looking that public right now, but we have nobody in the room. But there are a couple people online. Great. Let me get my thing out. Sec.
Would it be okay if I just close that door?
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe everybody's leaving. Sounds like everybody's leaving.
No, we're still in.
We're done.
Are you private?
Yeah.
No, we're not private. We're not
We're
private.
not private.
Welcome to
We're
stay.
not on ARPA anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Carlisle's town government relies on professional and dedicated public employees who are supported, trained, and motivated to provide the highest level of service. Our performance feedback and review process was developed to provide a workable and uniform practice of performance management for municipal employees at all levels throughout the town's departments and organizations, excluding the school and seasonal employees. Therefore, the select board used the same process for the evaluation of our town administrator this year, Ryan McLean. Rather than reading you a 4-page document, I'm going to summarize the results here and let each member of the board add their comments at the end of my presentation. Each board member independently evaluated Ryan and assigned a numeric score from 1 to 5 to 9 different performance categories, 5 being outstanding, 4 exceeds expectations, and 3 meets expectations. Ryan earned the following scores: staff and financial management, 4.6, attitude and application to work, 4.7, board and committee relationship, 4.1, leadership, 4.5, resourcefulness and creativity, 4.6, resident and community services, 4.3, job knowledge, 4.3, communication skills, 4.7, ability to learn new skills, 4.3. In addition, his progress towards accomplishing his previous year's goals was also evaluated. Ryan earned a score of 4.3 for his first goal, filling staff vacancies and starting succession planning. He earned a score of 4.4 for his second goal, publishing financial management tools, which we actually all got treated to today, so that was great. And he got a score of 4.5 for his third goal, establishing a communication plan. The most impressive aspect of these individual evaluations was the unanimity with which the board expressed their opinions of Ryan's performance. Overall, the theme was that in no case did Ryan only meet expectations. He either exceeded expectations or was outstanding in his performance. As a result, his overall score, all the above scores that were averaged, was 4.5. In summary, Ryan sets the standard for leadership and management within the town government of Carlisle. He's highly adept at setting goals, communicating with the select board, and managing all the departments within the town of Carlisle. He builds personal relationships, which are essential for building the trust of board members and volunteers. He's incredibly diligent, hardworking, and cares deeply about his job, his co-workers, and the future of the town of Carlisle. He's a results-oriented leader who works well with people and is diligently working to set the town on a more financially sustainable path forward, which includes all aspects of town government. So, any of my board members want to add their little tilly pumps to this?
I would like to.
Excellent.
An opportunity to take a mic.
You always do a great job at this part.
I'll take it. So, it's been a pleasure going through this process with Ryan. And I think it really exemplifies everything that Brian has brought to the town in this role. I had really very, very high expectations of Ryan from that first interview and when we decided that, he was the right person. And I think that he's just completely proven that he is the right person for this town and bringing us to kind of the next level of government that we need to be, and particularly as we're, the discussion we just had about, the challenges about finances. It's good to know that Ryan is there with his eyes on what's happening and building us the models that we need to do our jobs, to help him do his job, which is giving him the information and the decisions that he needs. So the items that really jumped out at me, I think that across the board, Ryan, I think has done a really great job this year. He came into a very difficult situation, and he just tackled it. I think the first one, I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm just going to highlight a few of them, but staff and financial management. I think, the way he has come to us with reorganizations and his calling out high performers every single time we have a meeting, and really providing development and growth opportunities for people, I think demonstrates his really, really strong leadership, which is directly related, I think, to the finances and the staff management. He just demonstrated today the financial management. And the last things that I wanted to talk about related to these items is that, he has come into this town with a really solid understanding of, learning what we need and taking his past experiences, and then also jumping in and getting certified, right? You went to school, you went to classes right after you started here, right? Yeah. And just making sure that he had the foundation to really excel in this town. And so, I think very highly of Ryan. I think that he's doing a really, really great job. I think we have a lot of challenges ahead of us. And the only feedback I gave him was to make sure that he doesn't burn himself out.
Thank you.
Yep.
David, did you want to say?
Not too much to add. I mean, I think the praise is all well deserved. Everybody, your comments and Nathan's and, more I'm sure to follow. I agree. The entry plan was amazing, right? I mean, he'd really done his whole. The key reason why I voted for him in the
When we chose it.
when I'm struggling with the words, was his just incredible preparation for the interview, right? And the thoughtfulness of the entry plan. I have it in front of me here where he really, nailed it. I mean, he really got right to the core of what we need to do. So that was the beginning of that. And then, he dove right in. I mean, his 30, 60, 90-day plan was really terrific, right? Just get to know people as people, take them on field trips, make them walk around. I think if you were to ask any random staff member, it's like a light opened up, right? Physically, the space, and organizationally and in every way, like opened up and unleashed the potential. Very good feel for human resources. The fact that, we've been talking about it for a long time, but he recruited really well, right? Getting Julie and getting Aubrey and giving them their portfolio, was really, really strengthened this town and empowering them and empowering others. So all those beginning pieces were really, great. And then the tool, and finance has always been, Ryan made it clear from the beginning that financial management was going to be one of his things. And, he did it. Like, he's done it really in a very strong way. So, all kudos to all those things that he's done. And I think it's on us now. It's kind of like with that tool. It's on us to make sure that we're keeping up, right? That we're leveraging the energy he brings and the ideas and we're not wasting them. Like we've got to harness that. So that's on us, but yeah, thanks.
Is Barney still there? Or did she drop off? 'Cause
Yeah,
I-
can you
Yeah.
hear me?
Yeah, not terribly well, but we can hear you.
Is this any better?
Yeah, that's a bit better. Thanks.
Okay, sorry, I had to, I'm in transit. And
Oh.
my apologies, but I'm gonna have to get off at 9 p.m. In order to make my grandson's concert. But to talk about Brian's evaluation for a minute, I thought it was a really good exercise, and also really enjoyed for myself, going through and thinking about these various aspects of what we would want in a really good town administrator. And I agree with what people have already said about what Ryan has brought to the town. I'll just add a couple of things that one in particular, I think, is his ability to listen and to draw people out, and his willingness to acknowledge when he doesn't know something, and to, ask for input, and also just very willing to, hear all sides, and in some cases change his thinking, in other cases change somebody else's thinking. And I think those are all really very important qualities. And the other thing I'd like to mention is I just think the lead by example can't be stressed enough. And since I have spent, I get into town hall pretty regularly, and it's very palpable, the difference in the kind of atmosphere and the attitude of some of the staff, as a result of having a strong leader who really thinks about how to support the staff, encourage them to develop, and also hold them accountable. So those are just a couple of things I wanted to point out. And Ryan, I'll just add my 2 cents worth, that I think we made a great choice, and our town is the better for it. One other thing I want to add is, though, I would really like us, if we could, as a select board, with Ryan's involvement, to at another meeting talk about this process, but also I'd really be interested, Ryan, in hearing from you, what impact did these evaluations have? Was there anything that came out of it that has made you decide you are going to do something differently, or are there things that came out of this that make you want to adjust your goals in some way? So I hope we will make sure we have that opportunity. And I don't mean to sound, preachy or anything, but I think the whole point of an evaluation, to me, is sort of how it gets acted on, what impact it has. And so if we don't really try to look at what that is, I think we lose a lot of the benefits of going through this kind of a process. So that's it for me. Thanks all.
Thank you, Barney.
Barney posed a question to the administrator.
Well, I want to, I did. all
No,
the-
I'm not expecting you to
summarize
do that
everything.
tonight, Brian. I just think it would be I would like us to have another opportunity, as a select board, to have that kind of conversation, if that's something other folks think would be worthwhile.
Yeah. So again, since I had the pleasure of getting to read everybody's evaluation, one thing again that was, again, unanimous, was everybody thanked Ryan for his service, and congratulated them themselves for having chosen him, because they think he did such a great job. And it is so refreshing to be able to step back and become the nighttime government, and, and to have whatever decisions and policies that we make get enforced and actually acted on by the daytime government, which with more alacrity than we've seen in other years. When I answer.
Yeah, I'd like just to add one thing is I always look at, sorry, performance review time as a time, to provide input and, to discuss somebody in their role and their happiness in their role and how they can develop and everything. I also look at it as a time to get feedback back. And so if you didn't, I would encourage you to go back to Ryan and just say, hey, what could I be doing differently? I know I asked him that and he gave me a very clear, great answer back. I just think it's a good time, to not have it a one-way focus, to have it a two-way focus so that we can grow from the experience as well.
I actually also asked him. So, okay. Anything else? Yeah.
No, I think I can only speak for my one-on-one relationship with Ryan, but it's been, from my view, it's been very positive, and he's taken advice from me, and I've also listened to advice from him throughout the year, and I plan to continue. And I have to say, it's very, it's one of the highlights. We meet once a week typically on some things, and it's definitely one of the highlights of my week, sitting down with him, because it's refreshing. I feel like, as you said, pat ourselves on the back. I mean, it's one of the most important things that we do, right? Is hire those senior positions, and we can feel good about that choice. And it's certainly made my energy and enthusiasm for the job I have greater. And I ran again because of that, right? I ran for another term because I enjoyed it, and I wanted to be part of, part two of that journey. So,
as did I. And I want to also point out that, not all towns love their TAs their new TAs that they hired. I mean, looking at Concord next door, I think their town manager lasted for 6 months or something like that before they got rid of him. So it's not always that you make the right decisions. But I think in this case, we all feel that we have. And we're really pleased with ourselves.
give yourself a big raise.
Yeah.
100% raise.
Yes, that's what I'm planning on. Yeah. Yes, your turn.
Great. So I'll deflect with a couple jokes, I guess. So I feel like that mediocre quarterback that's surrounded by a great team. So I would point out that I mostly coordinate functions, and the people that work for me and for us and for other boards and committees do all the work. So I'm certainly cognizant that all of the employees here work hard every single day to make these things happen. And then I get the pleasure of presenting their work to you. So that's good, and something to be recognized. My family is very blessed to have been picked to be in this position. I not only get to be closer to my family, but also do a job I really enjoy, which makes me, I think, a better person at home. So we appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this community, and thank you for welcoming us. All the boards and committees that I've worked with have been very welcoming, even when there are moments where we might have different visions or disagree. It's always been extremely professional. I've always learned everything and been very cordial. And I feel very strong about my relationship with each board member, that I have become a better person and a better employee because of the input and the information you've provided to me. It's helped me learn more about myself and how to do my job and how to be in this town. So I think that's what people want when they get a job. So I appreciate that opportunity and everything that you've done to help me try to be successful here. I will say some things that I did learn in this process. Barney had posed this question to me, so I did have a couple comments prepared. I need to be more comfortable with being uncomfortable. So a quote that David had during post-town meeting once reminded me of this and made me reflect on it quite a bit. But sometimes we judge ourselves on if town meeting goes very smoothly, we did our job right because of all the work that went into it. We wanted to go boom, 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 make sure the town meeting goes right in order. Sometimes with government, you need to let it get a little messy in order to really draw out the input that the town needs. And I've learned that about myself in this year, that I need to be uncomfortable sometimes with it not going perfectly and in a straight line, because the town deserves that flexibility and thinking, et cetera. So I'm getting better at that. I like things to go really well. I pride myself in these meetings and other things with things going the way they're supposed to go, because that's my job. But sometimes it can go in different directions, and we can learn in that way. And I'm going to do better at that personally. And then I do think that I gather input from segments of the community and everybody, but I think I can also do better at that, making sure I'm tapping into these long-term resources to make sure I understand things. A great example of that was the town building committee discussion at the MFC, and then going into town meeting. I was really surprised by the history I learned in the last minute there, and it would have been even better to have that conversation earlier, because the intention was to not misplace a bylaw, but to understand it and make sure that it existed. So just a quick example of how getting more input, and then continuing to communicate. So I definitely got better as the year went on, trying to inform the board on things that were coming up, so the conversations went better. And I'd like to continue that going forward. All of you had said that was more helpful to have some heads up. So would like to wrap that back around to just, we have a tremendous staff here. Everyone here is extremely dedicated. They work more than they're supposed to. They work and care very deeply about their jobs in the town, and just make sure that anything was said about me is really about those employees.
Great.
And there's your leadership right there.
Yep. In a
Exactly what
nutshell.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Yes.
They just get to be the puppet that says the things
Yeah.
that they did. It's nice to take credit for the
right.
people's work.
Good. Excellent.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, everybody, in fact, because this was a lot of work for everybody. All right. Select board policies. Now, this is one of these things that's not going smoothly. So
That's okay.
that's okay. Well, we're trying to get it right. And we don't have a lot of, this was something I was trying to explain to some people in town this week, that we don't always have opportunity. Well, we certainly can't talk to one another outside of meetings, and we get these meetings that are packed with things that we have to do and things that we, want to do, sometimes get put to the side and we don't have time to talk about it. I would say policies kind of falls under that, but they're very, very important for the town. Yeah, policies that we can all point to. So let me see, let me get my thing up. Town hall use policy. We have a discussion on that. Did everybody have a chance to read it over, and are
the ones in the packet the same as the ones you sent around, or I didn't do a close comparison
The ones in the packet are the clean copies
of what we did? Okay.
Could you put this up on the screen?
Sorry?
Could you put it up on the screen so we can just take a look at it? I did have a comment, but now that I'm at the auditorium, I don't have my notes.
I'll tell you, that's dedication to both family and select
The
board.
town hall use policy, we're not being asked to vote on tonight, right? It's just so should we go to the ones that we're being asked to work on tonight, since we don't have Barney for long?
Yeah, let's do that. I think, Barney, were you saying that you didn't think we should not vote on the committee creation one tonight?
Well, but just a thought on that. It from both, well, if we look at it and we want to, and we decide we need to make a few changes tonight, that was certainly, some stuff was put forward by Travis.
I think it'd be good to be able to share this with committee chairs and get their input before we actually vote on it. I just think another set of eyes from people that are actually, you know, on committees where they have to figure out how to fill vacancies or, you know, that kind of thing would be good to get their input before we finalize it, particularly since I don't think there's an urgency to get this decided right now. And, you know, I'm not looking for perfection, but I do feel it would be good to get their input.
David's not with us. Do you have any comments? Nathan?
But I guess is this a rework of the one that we had on our agenda last time and the time before that? It's
Yes.
just in a different format.
Well, it's in a policy format now.
Right. Yeah, so it's different
Because
format.
it was kind of like a briefing memo before, and now this is a real, would be a policy that would go online in our policies.
Right. And our comments from last time, it looks like they've been incorporated into this.
That was the intention. Yep.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess David's not here. He had the most comments on it, wanted to wordsmith it, but
Well,
how many?
it was a different one, not this one. He was
Okay.
looking at the financial one.
I guess I would just say, how many times is something on our agenda before we just need to vote on it? You know, I think it's at least 5 times so far.
Yeah,
This has been on our agenda, and I think if anybody had anything to provide, we really should have been providing it. Ryan, I think last time provided what we asked for in Word format so that we could provide it back. I guess I'm feeling like we're not providing a service here by closing out things on our agenda. We can always revise policies.
Yeah, we can. Were they real substantive things, Barney, that Travis?
Well, he wanted to change the, you know, where it refers to the executive assistant to the select board. He thought that it would be better throughout this policy to say instead the town administrator or their designee. And I thought there was one other thing.
I guess Ryan seems to have his email in front of him.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just want to speak though, while before you get to that, Nathan, I totally understand, you know, your thoughts about, you know, how many times we look at something, but I think we should have thought about allowing chairs of committees to have an opportunity to take a look at this. I mean, we should have done that early on, and we didn't. And I think it's really important in terms of both transparency, but also, you know, trying to make this policy something that is really useful and can be, you know, a guide for everybody, that we, you know, we give an opportunity to the people that are chairs of boards or the committee themselves to, and also I think it'll be good feedback to tell us whether or not what we've written makes sense. So I know I get it. I think we should decide this soon, but I think giving, you know, waiting a month and then deciding in November is not going to make, taking a vote in November is not going to make, I don't think it's going to make a difference in terms of implementation. Sorry, Ryan, I didn't mean to cut you off. You were going to say something about Travis's email.
Yes, thank you. So he asked about minors that volunteer on boards. So anybody who volunteers on behalf of the town is covered by the town's insurance generally, unless they are negligent or criminal. So if you work for a board or a committee for the town, then you're covered under the town's insurance. So that I do believe that answers his question.
Are we in this or in the town hall use?
Committee creation and
Oh, we
appointment.
are in that. Oh.
in
Around
terms,
town hall use, I missed that.
in terms of Barney's correct, he wanted to change executive assistant to TA to be more consistent with select board delegation. So rather than jump a level, he wanted to allow me to delegate to employees. So it said, don't codify executive assistant, keep it with the TA like other policies. So HR as example, I am in charge of HR, but delegate that to the HR director. And then he said regarding the multiple volunteers for one spot, it seems rather subjective to allow the TA to form a group of up to 5 people. Why wouldn't it always be 3 people? However, since it's the select board's appointment in theory, if the selection committee procured a candidate that multiple members of the select board did not feel was appropriate for a particular board, the select board could overrule the selection committee. So the select board still retains the power to appoint.
Was that a suggested edit or was that a? Could you read that again? I'm not.
He's saying why 5? It should be 3, or it could be 3. And then he's saying that the select board does retain the ability to veto the selection committee. So you're bringing a selection, but the select board can veto it.
Yeah, it's no larger. It's not 5. The TA or ATA will convene a small working group no larger than 5. I don't see the
I
problem
think he
with
was
that.
asking for a fixed number, right? Is that what?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but to include only one member of the select board. That's because we wanted to also have the chair of the committee and possibly.
Yeah, I think 5 is, anyway, I guess I wouldn't want to fix it at 3 because,
Yeah, you don't know, because there might be somebody else you want to have on
5 is
there.
good, but I think having the TA, have it go to the TA and the TA can delegate it is fine.
So we could have a motion contingent on those changes.
Yeah.
And, you know, the thing is, Barney, it could still go to the chairs, and then if there's more input, then we can still amend it. But at least we've gotten this one off of our docket.
Yeah, Ryan, have you heard anything from any committee members? Or does anybody even know that anybody seen this on our agenda and anybody?
Not explicitly, no.
Right.
That's fine. I'm comfortable with that if we want to adopt it tonight as amended. And then send it out with the explicit, request for people to give us feedback. That's fine with me.
The only other comment I will say is that the reason the EA was put in there was so that people reading this would not send this to Ryan, and then Ryan has to send it, it was.
Right.
Step by step, and although I agree that, there should be a certain amount of delegation. Also, people appreciate having a roadmap. So if I need a new committee member, what do I do? They can look at this, and they can just go directly to the EA.
Right.
So I'm of 2 minds on that one in certain respects.
Ryan, do you
Is
think
there a way to
be
put
having it-
something? Go ahead.
do you think it adds clarity having it be the EA in the policy directly?
So I'm going back and forth in my head between policy and process, but
Yeah.
if anyone was to read it and to see it, then yes, it would add clarity. Policy is more to guide us on how we would create the function. So I picture us creating an online form that follows this policy that people use for vacancies. But I respect clarity in policy. So if it is going to be the executive assistant, that's fine.
The other way to go would be to add something, I think it is at the end of the policy, isn't there something about, doesn't it provide the email of the executive assistant? At the end, or maybe if you
contact the executive. Yes.
If you could put something at the end that, however you want to phrase that, but for I don't know, contact to the, whatever we want to say down there, but make it clear that it's to the executive assistant that would take the first receive the interest, the letters of interest.
I guess
Nathan?
I hadn't noticed the, yeah, I think it's fine.
You want to make a motion then?
Just one other amendment before you do, since we're
Yeah.
considering amendments, the Conservation Commission is listed under the elected boards and it's not, and it's appointed by you.
Oh,
So we can just cut that out.
oh, yeah. Huh.
Okay.
It was caught by a eagle-eyed resident, actually.
Okay. Yeah, I read this 3 times and I didn't catch it. Okay.
I move that the select board vote to accept the committee creation and appointment policy as written in the packet and amended at tonight's meeting.
Second,
Roll call,
Arnold, I.
Brown eye.
Model I.
Reed, aye. Excellent.
Okay, all, I'm gonna have to scoot, but thank you and
Have a good
thanks for your
time.
work. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, next policy is the town hall use policy. Has that been,
Which we had 2 financial policies, right?
and let's see. Okay,
Doing financial or town hall use?
well, I was just doing them in order, scrolling from the first sheet. The first one here is town hall use policy, so that's why I went to that one, but we can do,
Town hall use, that's the one, okay. Let's-
all right. Again, I think this all makes sense.
Okay.
I have a motion to, well,
We weren't gonna vote on that one.
I guess we're not voting on that one. Does anybody have any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I did the original edit at Ryan's request, and then we had a meeting, I don't know if it was last one or 2 meetings ago, I can't remember. And one of our townspeople that frequently raises issues, raised an issue that is about like, well, if you allow one, you have to allow everybody kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one piece of information. I kind of went back through it and I'm sort of stuck on one thing, which is what's our intention? And the reason I ask, before we get to policy is relatively easy to draft if we understand what we want to do, right?
Yeah.
So we're sitting in what's effectively a community room, right? And I think you very convincingly, in my mind, have articulated the virtual community center concept. And I would say in light of the discussion we had tonight about finances, I mean, that's a very relevant point of view, right? Like we have spaces, we should be making sure that those spaces are used to the degree possible. So if we start with that and we say, okay, so town hall has a space, maybe a couple more spaces, but largely the space we're in right now to allow other groups of town to use it, that makes sense to me. Where we begin to get murky is, I guess, into sort of after hours. So if a town, and we have to define it, but if a group comes and says, I'd like to use the Clark room in the middle of the day and we can schedule it, we can create a scheduling tool and people are here, then I'm fine with that. I got kind of tangled. Honestly, I got sort of tangled in my own words when I was looking at the policy, because the old policy does speak to getting a key and bringing the key back. And it led me to, well, after hours, like if you go to the school community center, you don't just go. They have a custodian. In fact, if it's an outside group that's not a nonprofit, they will give you a charge because there has to be a custodian. Like they don't just let people guarded, like just come into the school building. That makes sense. But we're here too. We got a lot of stuff upstairs. So I'm kind of backing away from after, again, once we understand our intent, the policy drafting will be relatively straightforward. If we want to allow after hours use, like an evening use, I think we have to think about whether we want, and I'm just gonna throw it out there, either a custodian or a person who we have to have here who opens, make sure everything's okay, make sure they don't wander around and closes, and they should pay for that if that's the case. Or if it's a committee, like it's a town, any of these committees we just talked about, a person who says, yes, I volunteer, I am an, appointed official or elected official, one of us or FinCom or whoever it is, and I agree to be responsible for that group while they're here. I think the idea of just, they pick up a key, they do stuff, they go away. It doesn't, again, because they're sensitive and, there's things, right? I'm not as comfortable anymore with that. And I'm just throwing it out there as let's decide what we intend for the use of the space.
I think I made that point last time. We can't just have people just walking in here unsupervised.
So if we only want a policy that's day use, that's relatively straightforward. It's mostly here. We can cut out some of the stuff about keys and things. Right? If we want night use, I think we have to add some things to it.
Well, we have had our committees using it at night.
Committee meetings are different.
Okay, so committee meetings are okay, and
I
that's
don't think that's the intent
that's
here.
the key back and forth, okay? Because
Okay.
they also do need to have a key, because those committees don't own
They
a
don't
key.
all get keys.
They don't get keys.
Right.
Okay. I understand, for instance, that the Republican Town Committee has met in Town Hall.
Yeah, I mean, let's go back to
Is that
1-1.
a town committee? Is that a town entity? What is that?
I mean, read the first sentence. The conference rooms in the town hall should be made available to all town departments, boards, committees, and, local governments, blah, blah, blah. So I think this goes back to the old policy, right? I think that's okay, right? Whatever's been working where committees meet and they've frequently met at night seems to have worked out. I viewed this as more, celebrations, Republican, a quasi, not an official town committee. I don't think the Republican town committee is an official.
I think both the Republican and the Democratic town committees are.
They are. Oh, okay.
I-
Okay.
Ryan can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they are
I don't believe they're official town government committees.
not,
Yes, I guess I would draw the line I'd just throw it out as a line drawing opportunity.
Yeah.
Is that if it's a town committee, I think we've already said that committee covers everything, right? If it's a town committee or sponsored by a town committee and attended by a town committee, like if it's an activity of that committee, like if they're having a celebration or something, or like RecCom having a fly tying class or something like that. It's something that they are sponsoring and they will be attending.
Yeah,
And-
I'm fine with, they're
yes,
taking
that's that.
responsibility,
yes,
right?
yeah.
But other than that, after hours, I mean, now you have to involve staff, right? It's like the same thing the school committee has, right? Use of the school, you have to have it, you have to have school staff there
Right.
to open, close and clean up.
Right.
We'd have to have the same thing.
Exactly,
And they-
exactly.
The thing is that they already have, nighttime staff there and we don't.
Right.
So I think that we don't.
But even in those cases, Kate, where they have the staff, I
to
think
pay
they
it.
charge,
I know they do, but the thing is that they have.
they have the staff, and we would have to get a
It's
staff.
going to be reimbursed for that staff, for
Right.
that,
But they have somebody who works nights, so we'd
Yes.
have to ask somebody to work that
yeah,
night.
and
Right.
it's not going to happen.
Well, we could just say it's not, we could restrict it to daytime. I mean, I don't think we would have a problem allowing people, if the space is not otherwise occupied with an activity, to allow.
Under the purview of the town administrator, so that he can manage the building during the
Of
day.
course, yeah, of course. So again, I am happy to redraft once I have a sense of our, if we reach a consensus about what we want. I think it's easy enough to, edit this to make it fit.
I think what we're saying is we want it for basically town committees.
Well, I think we're, okay, but what about the celebration? What about the?
That would be again a
quasi-
town committee celebration, as you said, or let's say the,
Okay.
MFC wants to celebrate getting a project done and they're going to have a little party here.
Okay.
Uh,
So I'm trying to think of a group that doesn't,
Well, let's take Boy Scouts again.
yeah,
Let's take
take
Boy
Boy
Scouts.
Scouts, yeah. So Boy Scouts can use the activity room in the, they frequently use, I
Yeah,
should
and
say.
they also use the Hollis room.
Oh, they use a room here. You do?
Hollis room is in the library.
Oh, okay. So what, right, so that's good, right? So the library and the school and sometimes the FRS and, a lot of places are used. So are we saying that we're not part of that group anymore?
I think that's what we're saying,
Do they use it?
unless they use it during the day.
Well, they haven't needed it because there are, I believe there. I don't think we can forecast who might need a space sometime. I think I'm back to my initial point, which is I like the concept of the virtual community center. We are centrally located and we have a room, at least one room that's, vacant after hours. I'm okay saying no, or I'm okay saying, well, on certain occasions, but you have to meet these criteria, which I.
Yeah, but that's, okay, so let's talk about that virtual community center. There would be a program then that would be presented, and I would imagine that it should be sponsored by some town organization. So for instance, the COA bringing a program.
But again, that's what we write in the policy. Then we would say an activity for which a town body is responsible, approves and is organizes and is responsible. And it's the responsibility of, a member of that group to sign up for the duty, right? And we have to it's just, again, drafting is just
Yeah.
specifying the details of that
like,
decision.
School clubs have to have a faculty advisor.
Right.
So anything that comes here has to have a town sponsor.
Okay.
I think that might make it clear, more bright line as to what's allowed.
Is there any insurance issue?
Yeah, but I think it's just very clearly, if it's a committee related thing or a town staff, town, something that Ryan is proposing.
Yeah.
This isn't a virtual or this isn't a community center because it is not staffed
Right.
at night. And we have to give the flexibility, I would think.
Yeah.
Ryan may not want this, but if Ryan decides it's okay, it's okay.
Well, but he has to have the policy is, one policy would say it's at the complete discretion of the TA, whatever he wants. But I think what we're trying to do is write policies that have guidelines so that people can see them, understand them, and it's not just at the whim of so-and-so, and we don't get into a situation
It
where.
would be if it's affiliated with a committee.
Right.
Yeah.
And somebody from that committee has to volunteer to be the minder.
Otherwise,
No, I'm fine with that. I'm
That's
fine with
why I'm
that.
saying
So I can write,
Sponsored.
right.
Mhm.
I can write that. Give me another crack. I'll write it. And then I think the key thing is whatever it is now. We don't need to write about the key. The
Yeah, no, the key
responsible
thing is-
person figures out how to do all that.
Well, I would put that.
They'd have to
Yeah, I
lock
think
up. They
there's
have to
difference
open and lock up.
Policy and procedure.
All right.
And I think a procedure
Yeah.
should be attached to the back.
Okay, but Madam Chair, just to point out, we just voted unanimously to accept a policy that was also a procedure.
No, I know,
Okay.
but
It's very hard to distant thing.
yeah,
I got it. I'll take a crack at it.
okay. Next, the next one is,
Tax
well, we
enforcement.
got, it's tax.
Yeah. So I did edit that one, but you didn't put my edited one in the packet, right?
I did not.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
okay.
So the edits that you provided, David, would probably require us to restart the process and go back to the finance team and finance committee.
Well, the reason when I read it the first time, I was worried, and I'm still worried that it wasn't really, this is a serious item for a few people, right? If you're on that tax taking, whether you're at fault or not, you could possibly lose your house. So I take the process piece very seriously. So I sat down with Sandy and we walked through the actual timeline and the actual events that would occur. And I edited this to be much clearer on that piece, which hasn't made it in the packet. So I would like that to be, I don't think we need to, we already have
Let me ask you this, did any of those processes change any of the policy?
Well, again, you say policy, but we always commingle policy and procedure.
But
So the procedure is more important than the policy right now, because in a legal way, if somebody feels like we didn't follow our rules, or the rules weren't clear, that could be a problem down the road. So I respectfully request that you have my draft. And I don't know the working group, I wasn't part of it, but I would go back to those people and go to Sandy. I think I've laid it out a little more clearly with dates and what happens now and what happens next. And I believe that's pretty important in this case. That everybody who enters into that, who is, gets a notice of delinquency, really understands like what's coming next.
So I agree, but the prescriptive process you laid out would be a much more would be a much more strict interpretation of the Mass General Law. And I would want to know that the board, the finance committee, and the finance team wanted to do that.
Well,
So for example, sending all demand letters by registered mail would have a pretty significant tax.
don't you think you'd want a record like that of the notice you sent about somebody losing their house? I mean, think about it.
I do. But the first demand letters it's a little bit of an art. So it's, hey, you haven't paid your taxes yet. And then the second ones are, no, seriously, you haven't paid your tax. And then the third one is usually.
Well, I mean, we can write, anything can be written. You just have to be clear on what you're doing. So again, you can amend it and say, okay, there will be 2 informal contacts. And then the third one is register. The point being, looks by the statistics, and I think I even have them here. So I thought I got these statistics from, maybe I got them at another time. 2,300 properties, 300, around 300 get to demand note stage. 6 become liens. Of the 6, 3, and this is either typical or the now, I'm not sure. 3 negotiate payment. So, you work it out. 2 properties right now are the same owner, they're in tax court. But it's kind of like one, basically. It's 2 properties, 1 owner. And then there's one other one she couldn't remember. But my point is that for 2,000 properties, it's not an issue. For 300 properties, they're getting a note. I think we should be pretty clear on when you get a note and what that means. But even without that, 294 of them pay. They just pay once they get notified. Then you got 6 that get into liens. Now you get serious. I just, first of all, it's not a problem like that's an urgent problem, because actually the process is in pretty good control. But if we're going to go to the trouble of writing policies, and I'm a fan of it, let's be very careful here and let's do it right. Let's get counsel, let's get FinCom, let's interpret the law, but let's do it. Let's not just say, okay, I'm just going to write it down.
I don't think that's the process that happened with this policy, that we didn't just write it down.
I'm just saying.
And right now we have 0 policy. So
we also have effectively zero problem, right?
Well, no, I think we have
I thought we had a thing where we were going to write policies at this level of the board. So if I'm going to be asked to write a policy, then involve me early in that, negotiation. But I'm telling you, when I go interview the person who's responsible for actually doing the policy, which is Sandy,
Okay.
I don't get the same thing that's written. Okay. I'm just saying, and if it's me now, if I'm the delinquent taxpayer and I'm like me, I'm going to take you to court because you didn't follow your own rules. Who needs that?
she's not doing the same thing that's written because we have nothing written. So once we have it written, that's.
He is not following, her procedure is not the same, or it's not as clear as.
Well, it have to change. Whatever her procedure is,
Not,
it have to change to fit the policy.
again, I respectfully request that we go back and we look at it again, and I'm willing to put the time in, but I think it needs to be right.
Ryan, who's seen this?
The finance team, the finance committee, and it originally came from the Department of Revenue.
And so the core of this draft came from the Department of Revenue, and then it was edited for what we wanted.
So a few years ago, the town tried to publish financial policies and enlisted the Collins Center to work with Department of Revenue to publish base guidelines. And then that document didn't include some of the policy discussions that David's highlighting that are important. So it is important to understand when the demand notice is sent out. So if you make it in a specific date and that falls on a holiday, then we would have to adjust the processes left and right. So some of it is intentionally vague to allow for the way municipal governments work, and others need to be decided by the town. So a very prescriptive tax enforcement policy would have a direct impact on the taxpayer. And a looser one would have an impact on our ability to collect revenue. So it is a balance, which is why it's a policy, to David's point, and then everyone who's reviewed it so far.
So can I ask just questions about the highlighted 98%? I'm just assuming that that's something we were gonna talk at the last minute and come up with what that percentage should be, or is that
It's just a goal.
that's a goal?
Most of this is goal oriented, like having
Okay.
12% reserves.
Yeah, I actually don't think, if you want to keep it at a very high level of policy, I don't have a problem with the policy. Our policy, our goal is to collect all the taxes we can. It's, if we can't do it, we're going to pursue, either getting a workout, getting the money from you in some other way, or, enter into a foreclosure process. So I think, again, and it's the job of the treasurer collector to do all this stuff. So at the very highest level, if that's all we want to do, then that's fine. But we do get half prescriptive, right? I mean, I changed aid from demand to demand timelines. It's just like the timeline should be pretty crisp, and I'm okay personally with between, May 16th and September 16th at the discretion of the treasurer collector, these things will happen. It doesn't have to be like on that day you're going to get that letter, but it wasn't crisp in that way. And I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of somebody who's got enough to worry about. They can't pay their bills, so maybe they got other issues. They should have real clarity on that. I think we owe them that, because if we're going to take their house, let's take it,
Well, the two that are in tax court, how long we've been at it?
you're going to be that way anyway. Honestly,
Years, so.
you're going to be there
It's a
anyway.
surprise to them at this point.
No, but I'm actually not, again, 2,300 properties, we're talking about one person, but there's like 300 people that got tangled up in some delinquency.
Or they just missed the payment, right? Because it's
If they missed it, no, but
15-day thing here, that the
I know.
demand is really just a late notice, right?
yeah, that's okay. That's fine. I'm not, honestly, I'm not worried about it.
So
It's
so
the
what we're
later
saying-
on stuff.
What we're saying here is if you haven't paid within 15 days, you're going to get a late notice.
Yeah,
And you
that's
have,
okay.
and you have 60 days to respond to that.
Yeah, that's fine. It's the later stuff, right?
And I don't see what the later stuff is.
Well, again, you didn't see the draft I put in because Ryan didn't put it in the packet. So do what you want. I'm just saying I would prefer that we look at it again. But if you want to pass it, then pass it. You're 2 of 3 right now, so you can pass.
Well,
You can pass it with 2 if you like to, if you'd like.
Are these both of these things joined? Do it,
the
No.
two,
the revenue is a different one, revenue turnover?
Yes.
Yeah, that's different. I mean, I had a comment, but it's not, I don't know if you incorporated that or not, but it's not important.
I guess I look at this as kind of like the framework that the processes are going to be built around. And if they find that we need to make changes, we can make changes, but they have nothing right now to go off of, as what you were saying, David. And
But I've written one and we can go back through the thing and we can,
we have to start
how long does it take to
So
get through
so
the?
we are guided by state regulation and the purview of our auditors. What really, the reason why the town wants, or the state and our auditors want us to pass financial policies is right now in the technical aspect, the staff is deciding how it's done. Right? And the town should say how it wants it done. So how strict or not we are with tax enforcement, how strict we are with, and we are very strict with revenue turnover. I just want to make sure that's clear. Should be decided by the town officials and not our interpretation of the state law. So much like a lot of the structured talk I bring to you, you should decide what our level of reserves is, what our safeguards are for revenue turnovers, what our tax enforcement looks like. Because when we do enact some of these policies on tax enforcement, there are real implications. People do come angry, unable to pay, have to go to tax court, et cetera. So that's the point of passing the policies, and you should dig in on each one of them. But each one of them has its own, set of conservatism or liberalism, depending on how you want to implement them. Most towns, I don't have an exact number, but it is well above 3/4 have published financial policies. We are one of the few that do not. It is one of the few examples where Carlisle is lacking in terms of its.
You're moving to correct that.
Right.
So we're not. This problem didn't happen overnight.
Yep.
You were moving to fix it, but let's fix it I mean, if you want, I mean, did FinTeam, you're on FinTeam? Did you get into this already at the FinTeam level or?
Not at the meeting
Right.
I was at. 'cause
So, if select board's gonna drive the policy and it's got all this mechanics to get the right policy, put a select board member on the working group. Right? I mean, to come in, from 30,000 feet and say, well, here's the policy, are we good to go? Like, that's not really right. Like, I agree with you, we should have those policies. Well, then park somebody on those committees, say, work the policy, so that by the time it gets here, it's already been worked by somebody at the select board level who presumably can balance both the select board's objectives and the actual detail of the nuts and bolts. I mean, you're asking us, me in particular here, to react to a process that I wasn't part of. When I react to it, oh, no, we can't change it because the process has been baked. I mean, that's just not good in my mind.
So the way we interpret as a staff, the finance committee exists for that function.
But you just asked select board you said we want guidance from select board about the policy. Then you say, well, it's up to the FinCom I mean, listen, we had a meeting with FinCom just now. And what did we talk about? We talked about the select board will set the guidelines. Lynn is 100% right? Select board will give the priorities and then we'll get to work. That didn't happen here. That was like, we'll get to work and then you set the priority. It was well, I won't say it.
Well, on the other hand, though, David, there are things that the FinCom are more knowledgeable about than we are. And we also ask their advice about certain things. So
And I'm fine with that, but it's a matter of what's the step?
they've clearly have looked at this and have adopted it, let's call it. So.
So I think, I don't think you're being entirely fair, David. I think, we've asked to have policies created. We have been, I'm assuming that this is related to the financial policies from our audits. We have had it brought up all the time, every year that I've been here, that we don't have good enough financial policies in the town. I think it's good to have somebody speak with the auditors, speak with the state, speak with FinCom, speak with the Fin team, and come up with a draft policy. And I don't think that, I think that there are times when we need to take what we have gotten and put it in place and not feel like one person has to rewrite it. And, for all of these policies, you have said, I'll go and I'll rewrite it. Then it's just one person rewriting it.
It comes
because of your personal view on it.
Well, I think policy should be clearly written. So if there's
this is
bad,
clearly written, I think we just have a different view on what's clearly written.
that's fine.
It's not written perhaps in the way you would want it written, but that's
Again, yeah, it's a matter of our opinions, your opinion, my opinion, Kate's opinion. I'm okay. You got 2 votes. You can vote it. I'm just expressing in this particular one. The other ones, I mean, there were 3 today, right? So I did think about changing the one for the committees, but I didn't. It's fine. And it's fine. And I'm fine with it. The town hall one, the only reason I didn't complete is because of the issue I raised. And because we are in open meeting world, we can only have that discussion in the now time, right? And then this one, though, I have a much more deep felt objection to the way the process ran. And if we're going to run other financial policies, then I think we ought to think hard about, again, what level of guidance and when, if select board's not only going to rubber stamp, then that's fine. I'll just exit it and you guys do it and you can rubber stamp it and it's fine. But if we're going to have meaningful input, then let's get involved earlier. It doesn't have to be me. I don't care if it's me. I just think if we're going to take the responsibility to guide, we got to get in there earlier and do the work. And I just wasn't part of that process. I was asked to look at it later and I looked at it and it's like, oh, too bad, too late. So, okay, I just won't do it. I got other things to do, but I'm not going to just go along because that's the way people want it. I just don't think it's been done right, from a procedural standpoint.
I guess I'm also a little more sang-froid about people not paying their taxes. And I don't think we will get into, I think there's been some that have not paid their taxes, have not responded to any of the demands. And I guess, so I feel if this thing comes down on them, it comes down on them.
I think there's always a balance to policy work. I volunteered in my community at one point, like you are, and I know that policy, it always goes this way. So what I would say is there's 50 to go that we have to review, and there's no time limit, but there's another 13 financial policies and then somewhere around 30 select board policies that haven't been reviewed in a few years. So it would pay dividends for us to hear what David's saying and say, what is the process you want to review these policies so that we can do that, so that when it does get to your level, it's more about fine tuning than it is rewriting. So I guess I'm asking for, having been asked to review all these policies and make sure we get them passed, like what should be the process so that everybody is heard and involved.
But
I don't know if that's answerable tonight, but
yeah, I'm not sure that it is, but I think there's a form and then there's kind of the outline content of it. And I think, similar to the discussions that we had with FinCom of saying, here's our goals, here's the things that we want to see. And I think if there's a policy where, let's say there's no policy written, like, well, we can take this policy here. It's like, okay, what do we think for when the announcement should go out? What do we think, for how much time is given and what are the steps after that? But I think that the policies themselves should all be fairly similar in format. And they should be similar in the types of wordings that are used, because we want the consistency so that it's easier to understand as the citizen, right? So I think the simpler the better, and then you build the more complex parts into the actual process.
So whatever the MA, what is it? The MASB or what's the one that we belong, the government one?
MMA.
Maybe it's MMA. I mean, when I was on school committee, MASC puts out template policies all the time. Like you just go to the library and you can pull down all 50, right? And here they are. And you can go through them relatively efficiently to say what does or doesn't work for Carlisle, but they're already written, right?
So that's what these are.
That's what these are, but are they all the same? Are they written for small towns or what, or doesn't it matter? I don't know.
They're written for a base town and then to adjust them.
Okay. Well, maybe we should just clarify that, like if we take them, I mean, you made it, see, I guess I'm kind of not clear because if that's true, right? So the policy comes out of a cookie cutter that's from those guys who know all the towns and have a lot of experience, right? So that that's sourced through what's been working and not working over time, I presume, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Then why go through all this review at the finance team and why even bother to do that? Like, why not just take those and just, we'll say, well, what, are there any fee, we could take a bunch of them at a time and say, from our level, what do we think works and doesn't work? And if we need to do a dive, do a dive. I mean, I just don't feel like there's consistency of approach.
I think it's the perfect process, right? You start with a template. You talk to the auditors, you talk to the FinCom, you talk to the Fin team, you see, because they're baseline, where do you add? And then you bring it to the select board and you say, this is the process we've gone through. I guess,
I guess I didn't see anything wrong with the policy personally when I read it.
Right.
And I was at the FinCom's meeting and they just, they had all read it and there was very little discussion and they adopted it.
Interestingly, there was a lot about revenue turnover.
They were
Less
way
about
more,
tax
yes, this one,
And I do think that tax
Yes.
enforcement is more of a select board policy function. So I don't
maybe that's,
think that does align with what I think would happen. But the revenue turnover one was discussed for an hour.
Yeah.
And because that's audits and controls and feeling comfortable with the town's finances, and tax enforcement is it's a policy, but it's also an art.
Well, it may lead to legal action, right? I mean, this is one that almost certainly, listen, if you get a late notice and you pay your bill, it's irrelevant. But if you take it to the end game, you're going to be in court. So you got to write it. And maybe they did, but I'm just telling you, and I write legal documents all day long. It doesn't seem like it was written knowing that the end game will involve litigation. So
you don't think that reading this,
I think it's not tight. I think it leaves loopholes for the defense.
I guess I would suggest that we have a much larger loophole right now.
It's fine.
We don't
Pass
have-
it.
because we don't have a policy.
I move that we
Just pass it.
adopt the tax enforcement policy.
I guess that leaves me to second it.
Mhm.
Okay, I second it. Any further discussion? And again, okay. My further discussion is I'd rather have this than no policy. And after we use it for a year, and if we find it doesn't line up with our process, or if there's some other reason, we can come back and amend it. That's the nice thing about policies. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? One abstention. Okay.
Revenue turnovers?
Revenue turnovers. This is, when people collect money, like for instance, when collect money for the dump sticker and stuff like that, what's the process? There's a receipt book. So apparently there are some people who do not want to pay with a check. They want to just give cash. So they need to be given a receipt, and there will be, the idea is that there will be spot audits, kind of surprise audits, to make sure that those records and the money is being turned over properly and correctly.
So basically saying you can't have a little cash drawer in a cash box in your drawer.
That's correct. Well, you can have it in your drawer, but then you need to
You have to
turn it in
record it.
every day, and it has to be recorded.
And there's also petty cash policy coming. There's
Okay.
other versions of this.
But this one, just to make sure I understood it properly, after all of these times we've read it, it's how are we recording this cash stuff that's coming in outside of the normal channel?
It's how are we controlling
Yeah.
revenue that is brought to the town in all forms?
Okay, yeah.
Cash is the most dangerous if you
Yes.
think about it in financial terms. It's the hardest to track.
Yeah. So for instance, somebody could give you a $20 bill and you give them a receipt for 15 and no change. You keep the 5, but because we're going to give people receipts, we want, the receipts to match up with the money.
So you're saying all receipts to the town. Where is the non just cash or check or something covered here? Because when I think of that, it's like money from my taxes or from paying my vehicle excise tax,
There you would have a canceled check,
right?
whereas with cash, how can you prove you've paid something without having gotten a receipt?
So a lot of the turnovers are centralized. So anything that's paid through the town website goes directly to the finance staff for reconciliation. And the treasurer has a heavy function here. It is the department level that receives the most attention in this policy because that's the most risk and also the most it can deviate and you don't want it to.
Okay, because when I read this where it said treasurer collector, when they're accepting the turnover, okay, they may be doing it themselves is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, a good chunk of our revenue is brought automatically into the town.
Okay, so this does cover everything. It's not just the school
No.
Yes.
lunch boxes or
Yeah,
whatever.
well, it's also
Okay.
school though, but
Tax collection office, the town clerk's office, all of them are
Everybody
incorporated into this
follows it.
policy.
Okay.
Yeah. You have a comment on that one you said? Oh, no, okay. All right, so do we have a motion to adopt?
I move we adopt the revenue turnover.
Second.
Policy.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
And I move that we don't move on the town hall policy.
right, because no, that one needs rewriting.
Just kidding. That was a joke. Bad joke.
Okay,
Badly timed.
it's all right, it's okay.
All right.
We forgive you. It's late.
Yeah.
All right, town administrator report we've done.
I don't think we finished it, did we?
Yeah, we did. We
Yeah,
actually
we had the
finished it.
agenda. He didn't do the
The only thing
agenda.
left is the agenda.
The agenda.
So this has a Greeno barn discussion, the fire chief and police chief evaluation discussion. That'll be very high level. It's just what you want to accomplish in those evaluations. The charter revision from the ESC. The committee discussion that I referenced during the TA report, the church contracts, the town hall native plant garden, and there's a placeholder for policies, but we may rework that.
After tonight's melee.
Well, I just,
No, I'm just,
how do you accomplish all of it? I think is something that we should discuss.
yeah. Okay. Liaison reports. I have one. Oh, by the way, there is also something on our desk, up under the ARPA thing. Were we supposed to talk about this?
I think we did.
That was the
utility
DPU
letter. We did that already.
letter.
Oh, that's the DPU letter, sorry. Okay, I do have one liaison thing, and that is at the Housing Trust committee last night. We just talked about the Bog House. Apparently there's been, scuttlebutt around that it would make really nice workforce housing for fire Bog House for the fire department. However, there's a lot of problems. Apparently, Chapter 97 buildings that are on Chapter 97 lands such as this cannot be leased, which is why there's problems with tenants and making leases around it. So the Housing Trust voted to urge the select board to look into excising the Bach House out of that chapter, starting the process of excising it, getting it out of Chapter 97 and a portion of the land to it so that it could be redeveloped.
Okay, so it's gonna sound crazy, right? But is there a way that as a town, we could like allocate it to the fire and the police department and they can do what they want and they can rent it out?
I don't, I,
So that we're not leasing it?
So it cannot go to the fire department. It can only go to you, the select board.
and we can't lease it because it's on Chapter 97.
What is chapter 97 agriculture or something?
So Article 97 is open space
So it's-
under the direction of the conscom. So right now, the building and the land is controlled by the conscom by law. So what this is doing is carving out the building and giving it to someone. In the sense, it would be the executive, and then you could lease it or repurpose it because it's no longer in protected Article 97 status
Does that have to go through the whole state?
Yes, it does.
in town meeting. So this isn't a sole select board function. This would have to be. There's a lot to this. I really simplified it. There's a lot more to it.
Anyway, all I wanted to do was raise awareness. And that's or all this housing trust wanted to do is let us know that maybe we should start thinking about doing that so that it doesn't fall down around our ears and we have lose an opportunity.
So that's why people have been living in it for free.
Yes.
So very generally, it is rare for conservation commissions to own buildings for this reason, because they don't have the capacity like the executive in the town does to manage them. So in Article 97, land agreements, it's usually just the land that's controlled by the Conservation Commission. But in this instance, the entirety of the place is under the conscom's control. They don't have the ability to do things like licensing and leasing like the select board does.
Okay.
But even to get it to the select board, it seems to me we have to go to the state.
Yeah, so it was,
I mean,
it's fine when it's
Not
being
ours,
used
it's
for
not ours, yeah.
agricultural purposes, but
Yeah.
like cranberry bogging, I
yeah.
don't know what it's actually called, cranberrying.
So what if the fire, the fire and police staff like grow tomatoes on the deck?
Problem solved.
Okay, so that's my report du jour, as they say. The warrants, there were no minutes.
There are no minutes. We're getting Gretchen up to speed.
Yeah, no,
And Aubrey is handling the last two meetings, so those will come back around next meeting.
okay. And public community input. No hands? Going once, going twice? Motion to
I
adjourn.
move we adjourn. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.